Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about WhatIf Deku became her guiding light part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story AxTheSimp from 𝗬𝗓. So let's start the video. Leap of Faith chapter text. A small teen could be seen rushing forth into an unknown area. Her vibrant light pink to pale orange umber ponytailed hair whipping back and forth behind her. Escape strands brushed against her sweat-glistened forehead, but the sweat and heat didn't matter. All her attention was focused on the towering mountain facing her minuscule figure. Without a moment of hesitation, the girl shot up into the sky with a beam of amber light trailing after. She forced herself forward and outstretched her hand, aiming for the wide ledge. A similar, but shorter blast of light shot out from her bare feet, giving her an extra boost to grab onto the ledge. Her grip was strong, her fingers leaving an imprint in the tough rock as she threw and propelled her body upwards to another ledge. Repeating her little pattern, the pink-haired female quickly made it to the top with a couple of pants. Placing a hand over her chest, she took a necessary breath, her lungs begging for oxygen. Don't stop now. Can't stop now, she thought to herself, her pale lime eyes taking in the rest of the course. She could feel her hand tremble against her chest, mentally cursing herself before wrapping her fingers into a tight fist and taking a deep breath. Not wasting another precious second, the girl shot forward, years of track easily letting her press on without any more trouble. She could see a great force of wind up ahead, the air unusually crisp and chilled her to the bone. Must be some of the strongest competition here. That's so freaking amazing. She grinned to herself, her thoughts firing her up again. The girl's lightly sun-kissed skin seemed to glow brighter. A bright amber aura covered her body as her legs seemed to carry her faster and faster to the point where her feet barely seemed to touch the ground. Like a living laser, the pink-haired girl flew across the finish line. Raelynn Byeong-Ho. Her quirk, radiance. By absorbing and manipulating the energy from different types of light sources, she can produce powerful and burning energy beams from her eyes, hands, and feet. That's some hot stuff. As the remaining competitors crossed over the finish line, a couple moments after her, Raelynn had taken the time to actually catch her breath. With a soft cough, she took the time to get a better look at the competition as they raced toward the end of the course. A tall, raven-haired girl vaulted over the finishing line right before a curly, green-haired female and toothy-faced male could cross over. Raelynn smiled and softly applauded them for their efforts, bounding over to the three of them. "You guys did great. I really hope all of us can get in." Her words flew out of her mouth. The small girl wasn't one to slow down, no matter what she was doing. One of the other females turned and grinned at Raelynn, firmly grabbing her hand and shaking it. "Same to you, girlie. I saw how you leaped up the mountain so freaking easily. It was so awesome," she bubbled. "This kind of test really isn't in my kind of comfort zone right now. But if we get in, I'm gonna push to be just as fast as you. Oh, I'm 𝗧𝗵𝗲, by the way. Sorry if I rambled. My friends say I can do that." 𝗧𝗵𝗲 grinned sheepishly. Ray chuckled and shook her head. "It's totally fine. I get like that a lot too. Or I just talk too fast that I end up having to repeat myself a bunch." The toothy male beside them grinned slightly at the upbeat conversation as the raven-haired girl inched her way closer to the little trio. She was fixing her slightly messy ponytail, her long hair somehow coming together into a spiky fashion. "Both of you have quite astonishing quirks." She then turned some focus to Raelynn. "Especially you. I saw the way you traveled up the mountain as well, and your blinding speed. If we both make it into the hero course, I hope we'll be able to learn from one another." Raylynn's sun-kissed face was dusted a light red, taking a few steps back, not used to so much praise. As she opened her mouth to respond, the ecstatic and blaring voice of Present Mike drowned her out. "All right, you kids, it's time for the final portion of the UA recommendation entrance exam. The interview. Don't stress it out. It's just a few questions with a few of our faculty members. Everyone should start making their way to the silver-colored building on their right. Remember, just be honest." All of the participants made their way to their next challenge, all conversation left to simple memory. Results chapter text. 3 weeks passed after the exam, but not a day went by that Raelynn didn't get up and got to check her mailbox. Today was no exception, the colorful-haired girl getting up from her dark purple bed. With a quick swing of her legs and a stretch, the teen was out of her bed and jogging out of her room, making her way down the halls. Taking her feet off of the soft, dark red strip of rug that stretched down the pale white hallway, Ray placed her bare feet on the white and gray marble surrounding the rug to run her fingers against the painted wall. She found the slightly rough feeling comforting, a strange habit she picked up when she was young. Her brows furrowed slightly. But she shrugged it off and removed her fingers as a wide mirror interrupted the wall. Raelynn shook her head and started to move faster, taking turn after turn down the winding hallways, eventually reaching the top of the main, grand staircase. The babble of the small waterfall pond at the base of the bifurcate staircase masked Raylynn's frantic footsteps. The larger-than-life mansion was unnecessarily big for the people who lived there, but its design was a nice combination of the people who lived there. Traditional Japanese on the outside and European modern on the inside. Sliding down the polished, marble railing, Raelynn jumped off and jogged to the doors only for them to swing open to reveal a tall, female figure holding a pile of mail in one hand and a mug full of some liquid in another. Mrs. Byeong-Ho. You know what your grandparents have said about the mail and running down the halls. Judging by how you greeted me at the door, instead of at the top of the stairs this time, it seems you violated the no jogging and brisk walking rule. The female stepped out of the door and shut the door behind her, using a third hand to close it while a fourth and final hand floated up to adjust the glasses on her face. Lydia LX2, an android created to be a maid, but was repurposed to be a lifelong helper and friend to Raelynn. Though she only has 2 upper arms, she has 4 wireless, floating hands to help complete multiple tasks at once. Now that's tech at its best. Raelynn went to take the mail from her blueberry-haired friend, but the hand holding it was quickly raised high above her 5'4" figure. Come on. You know that's never fair. I can't help but move faster. This is you. Hey, we're talking about. You know that practically my entire family went, but my mom broke the chain. I want to be able to restore it, you know? It'd be like that old cartoon where the teen restores his honor to his father. But for me, it wouldn't have all the death and abuse. And on top of, a hand clamped down on the girl's lips. You're rambling again, Ray. Lydia snickered, lifting her mechanical hand away from Ray's mouth. Instead, she found better use for it by searching through the mail for exactly what they were all waiting for. It only took a couple moments before the android stopped and pulled out an envelope that seemed to stand out among the rest. Raylynn's eyes widened as Lydia smiled down at her. It's here. Lydia breathed out, staring at the envelope. Oh my gosh, finally. It feels like I've been waiting forever. Come on, Lydia, let's open it already. Lydia looked down at her confused. What? She turned the envelope around to show what seemed to be a bill from the electric company. It's just a monthly bill. If you're so excited about it, I'm sure you can take out some of your allowance to help pay for it. Lydia couldn't help but laugh. Raelynn simply rolled her eyes at her, gently shoving her. Remind me to tell Ollie to turn your humor setting down a couple notches on your next upgrade. Lydia soon stopped laughing and lifted up the white envelope with a red seal that was right under the bill. You just need to learn to appreciate a good misdirect. And here, this might be more to your liking. Raelynn gleefully took the letter out of Lydia's hand, practically bouncing from foot to foot as she read over the official lettering of you. A high school. With the same energy as a child opening presents on Christmas morning, Ray tore apart the envelope, leaving the remains scattered on the floor. Instead of finding a letter of her acceptance or denial, in her petite hands lay an electrical container of some sort. Raelynn looked to Lydia in confusion, but the taller female looked just as lost. After a couple of shakes and taps, the metal disc sprang to life with a holographic image of the symbol of peace. The young girl let out a little squeal when she saw the pro-hero. All Might was an absolute living legend with countless feats of bravery and strength. That same man was about to deliver the message of a lifetime to her. Raelynn Byeong-Ho. It is with great joy that I tell you. You have passed the recommendation exam and will be attending 𝐸 high in our prestigious Class 1A. Be proud to know that you are among a handful of particularly gifted students and will be expected to go beyond your current capabilities. The road up ahead will be filled with many trials and tribulations, but we know that you will be able to handle all that is thrown at you. Congratulations, and remember to go beyond, plus ultra. As the hologram fizzled out, Raelynn was left completely speechless. I've been practicing and training so hard and for so long. I finally made it. I'm going to make things right. I'll get them to see that. Raelynn, you did it, Lydia screamed, her hands dropping whatever was in them to grab Ray and bring her into a hugback pat. Without forearms, it made embracing difficult, but this was just their normal. When the helper let go, Ray's raw excitement hit her. In a matter of seconds, the two were jumping, screaming, and dancing around the mess they made on the polished floor of the house's foyer. From the top of the main staircase, a couple watched the two girls celebrate. They continued to watch until Lydia mentioned something about a celebratory Sunday. prompting both of them to make a mad dash for the kitchen. I told you she would make it all on her own, and you wanted to get her in purely on legacy status. A deep voice jibed. HMPH. The other one huffed, seemingly unamused. They kept their gaze on the kitchen entrance. We both know she's unstable. That exam could have gone 100 ways. She was just lucky enough to end up with the one where she gets to have her heartbroken delayed. First day jitters chapter text. Needless to say, the rest of Raelynn's middle school year and spring break flew right by. Despite all of the work and practice, nothing could quell Raelynn's bubbling excitement for her first day at UA. Finally, the day in question was staring her in the face. As the girl stepped out of the bathroom connected to her room, she caught a glimpse of emerald and gray from her closet. A soft giggle echoed inside the room, her legs carrying her towards the colors and opening up the doors that shrouded their entirety. Before her was the UA uniform, an outfit she would wear with the utmost pride and would become one of the most important things in her life. Her fingers gently felt the fabric, a little smile coming over her. If only you could see me now. A few minutes of struggling and meaningless primping went by, and soon enough the teen was ready. Grabbing her white and sunflower-covered backpack from the foot of her bed, she dashed out of her room and down the stairs in record time. "Bye, Lydia," she yelled out into the foyer before opening up the front doors and sliding into a black car awaiting her outside of the large house. It wasn't too long before Raelynn had arrived at the school and was heading into the grandiose, prestigious academy. Although she had been in the building before for her exams, she still couldn't help but marvel at the gorgeous interior and the feel of the whole place. It was practically something out of a dream. A sudden, rough jolt and the sound of falling books brought Raelynn back to reality. "Hey," the voice cut through the air like a knife, clearly annoyed. "Pay attention to where you walk, 𝗳𝗲𝗧𝗏." The pink-haired female turned to see another girl, her steel-gray eyes shooting daggers down at Ray. Her black and silver hair fell in front of her face as she bent down to pick up her scattered possessions. Without hesitation, Ray got down as well to help, frantically apologizing for the accident. The other girl rolled her eyes over the whole situation already. "It's whatever. Just pay more attention, especially in a crowded place like this." When both girls had stood up, the taller female reached over and snatched whatever Ray had picked up, leaving without so much as another sound. Raelynn watched as she walked off, completely confused. First day nerves, I think. She continued to roam the halls, making sure not to bump into anyone else for the morning, until she made it to her designated classroom. Class 1A. Wow. This is it. I'm going to meet so many new people. These guys could even be my friends. And there's going to be so many cool quirks. I just hope mine can live up to everyone else's. All you have to do is slide the door open, Ray. God, I probably sound like a dork, but at least I'm safe inside my mind. Ray brought her hands up and slapped both sides of her face at once. "Stop being a rambling dummy and just open the stupid door," she muttered to herself, finally going through with the action. Heads turned to the entrance in curiosity. Raelynn felt her cheeks heat up from the stares. Her eyes darted across the room to look at each new face, becoming overwhelmed. Although she had just been in a hallway crowded with people, being in a room with people she'd be spending the next 3 years with scared her excitement. She opened her lips to say something, anything, but doubt crept into her mind and took her voice. Instead, she walked near the back of the classroom, taking a seat between some kid with black hair and another with a bird head, one row away from the window. She felt some eyes linger before losing interest, going back to whatever they were doing before she showed up. With everyone not focused on her anymore, Raelynn did some staring of her own. A guy with a mask. Some bird head guy. That girl I bumped into earlier. A spiky redhead. A floating uniform. Boy with glasses. Guy with spiky black hair. Girl with long earlobes. Another girl with horns. Wait. Floating uniform. Eventually curiosity overcame her, and she got up from her new seat, quietly approaching the garments. Ray gently tapped the shoulder of the uniform. "Hello? I'm guessing that's your quirk." The clothes seemed to turn to face Ray. "Oh, yeah, my quirk makes my entire body invisible all the time. It makes life super fun. Name's Toru 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 a confused look, Ray awkwardly took what she believed was her hand, slowly shaking it. "I'm Byeong-Ho, Raelynn." She made a high-pitched squeal noise and vigorously shook her head. "I mean Raelynn Byeong-Ho. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that you only use the last name first to call others out of respect and stuff. I'm sorry, I still stumble over my words when it comes to Japanese. But please, just call me Ray. A giggle came from in front of her. It's okay, Ray. That name is super cool though. Soft footsteps came towards the two, a blurb of pink hopping over. Yeah, where are you from? You definitely don't sound like you're around here. The horned girl bubbled with a wide smile. Any of Raylynn's worries and anxiety melted away, finally starting to feel loose. Well, I'm a mix. My father is from South Korea, while my mother comes from America. I live with my grandparents though, who live here in Japan of course, she explained as the other two stared in interest. That's so cool, the two exclaimed in unison. The pink girl grabbed her hand, joyfully shaking it. Name's Mina Ashido. I can't wait to talk to you more during the year. Ooh, wait, since you're part Korean, does that mean you can speak it? As Raelynn nodded to answer, the first warning bell rang. More students hurriedly walked into the classroom, while those already inside ended conversations to take their seats. The girls gave each other little waves before following along with the move. The class was almost full, most people sitting in silence until the boy with the glasses stood up abruptly. He charged across the hallway, an arm swinging back and forth at an ashy blonde sitting with his foot on his desk. The boy adjusted his glasses, a sort of parental disappointment written across his face. Take your feet off that desk right now. The blonde looked up at him, a glint of amusement in his eyes. Huh. The sound dripped with sarcasm and insincerity. It is shameful and disrespectful to the academy as a whole. He shook his head. It's the first day, and you're already ruining school property, you disobedient cretin. The spiky-haired male's demeanor changed, no longer entertained with the uptight teen. You've got to be kidding me, 4 eyes. Did your middle school stick that thick-ass branch up your ass, or did you pop out your mom like that? His lips curled up into a devilish grin. I'm gonna have fun tearing you a new one-hall monitor, nerd. The two continued to go back and forth, but Ray was too busy pinching her nose to pay attention. She was trying her best not to laugh at the whole thing. It was just so stupid. Practically seconds away from bursting like a balloon, the two stopped and turned to face whoever was at the door. The one with the glasses lost interest in the blonde and started a conversation with the plain-looking broccoli teen at the door while the blonde stared. Eventually things calmed down, the blonde-haired teen looking around the room. As Raelynn finally calmed her potential laugh attack, she looked up, locking eyes with the blonde. The two awkwardly stared at one another, Ray bringing her hand up to wave at him, only to be received with an annoyed snarl and being ignored. Suddenly, a banana-colored worm-like figure rolled into the classroom. It wiggled its way into a standing position, a very tired and shady-looking face at the front of it. Hello, I am Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher. He lifted up an applesauce squeeze, taking a long drink of it before stepping out of his bag and pulling out what seemed to be a uniform. Put these on and meet me outside. There were a few murmurs of confusion, but the class got up and compiled, wondering what the hell waited for them outside. The first day chapter text dressed in their training uniforms for the year. Class 1 stood outside on a barren type of training ground field. Everyone was confused and a little on edge as their eccentric teacher explained that they would be having a quirk assessment test. A quirk assessment test? A cry of confusion and fear rang throughout the air. Yes, did you not hear me the first time? Their teacher responded as if it were a casual Monday. But what about the orientation? Doesn't it start soon? A short, brown-haired Uraraka piped up. Raylynn's hand shot up. Plus, it's the first day of school. Giving a test is kinda crazy. The life of a hero is crazy. He started, turning to face them, a phone with all of their listed tasks in hand. At this academy, we aren't held down by traditions. I'm allowed to run this class as I see fit. If you can't take something as simple as this, then you don't deserve to be here in the first place, so just leave. The group turned to look at one another, seeing who would crack under the pressure of his words. They were all sizing one another up, judging on look who would be the weaklings and powerhouses among them. When moments of awkward silence passed, and no one moved, Aizawa started again. Fine then. You will all be subjected to many tasks, in which you'll be given free range to use your quirks, and as Class 1 I expect all of you to excel. In each trial, you'll be scored and by the end of the test, those at the bottom will be expelled. People began to murmur as panic gripped their minds and hearts. They knew you, would be difficult, but this was a whole new level of fuckery. Bakugo. Gray eyes meet dark scarlet ones. You placed first in the entrance exam. Show us what got you here. I want you to throw this softball as far as you possibly can with that loud quirk of yours. Anything goes, as long as you stay in the circle. Raelynn watched as Bakugo took the ball from Aizawa and stepped into the circle, preparing himself for the throw. So that's the kid who was arguing with Glasses Guy. He was kinda a meanie but kinda funny too. I wonder what Mr. Aizawa meant by loud boom. The ball skyrocketed into the atmosphere, smoke caused from the explosion trailing after it. Rei brought a hand over her mouth and nose as fast as possible. Despite her efforts, she broke out into a couple of heavy but muffled coughs. A couple of eyes looked at her before bringing themselves back to Aizawa. You all have to know your maximum capabilities. It's the most rational way to estimate your abilities and potential as a pro. If you're not pushing yourself as hard as your body can take, you'll never reach your true potential. He raised his phone, presenting a glowing 705. 2 meters to an awestruck class. 705 meters. A blonde with a black streak in his hair gasped. That is totally wicked. Ashido clapped her hands together, excited. That looks like fun, I want to go. The class made sounds of agreement, everyone ready to prove themselves. Rei was just as hyped up, a barely noticeable amber aura appearing around her body. A smug grin etched itself into Aizawa's face. Let's begin. Tilde 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 tilde. Aizawa subjected his students to 8 tests, most of them being child's play for Raelynn. When it came to the tests including stamina and flexibility like the distance run, the long jump, the dash, and seated toe touches, she finished in impressive timing. Part of what got her into UA in the first place was her speed and agility in the recommendation exams. Abilities like that were beaten into her since middle school, her grandparents accurately knowing what would assist her quirk the best. But strength was definitely not a strong suit, and her sit-ups were simply mediocre. As the tests drew closer to their end, people who hadn't done the softball toss yet were up. Rei watched in surprise as Mina managed to use her acid to propel the ball to 85 meters. Raelynn. Aizawa spoke, not even looking up from the device. You're next. Mina walked back to her classmates, gently nudging Raelynn as they passed one another. She gave Rei a confident smile, whispering a good luck to her. The green-eyed girl stepped into the circle, picking up one of the many softballs. She felt her hand begin to tremble, not just the nerves getting to her this time. You can do something this simple. It's not hard. Stop being a coward. Just absorb. With the sun beating down on her, her tan body was encircled with an amber glow, as if charging up. Bring it back. Remember the limit. Her arm shone brighter as she brought it back, the ball surrounded in the amber light as well. Don't lose control. She roughly brought her arm forward, the ball rocketing off of her fingertips, a colorful trail of amber light behind it. Raelynn watched it with a giddy smile, barely able to believe her own ability. She felt a sharp shock in her arm, but she couldn't care less. 935 meters. The class shouted out as Aizawa showed them the device. Besides Uraraka and Bakugo, no one had been able to reach that high of a number. As the classmates murmured, apparently their favorite thing to do on the first day, Aizawa looked at the pink-haired girl before turning to address the class. Calm down. This should be expected from one of our recommended students. Next is Izuku Midoriya. Aizawa deadpanned. The teacher was unsure of what to think of Raelynn. When her grandparents came to the school a couple of days before the exam, they had given him and present Mike a warning about her powers. They said she could manage, but she did have what could possibly be disastrous control issues. At the time, the tired pro was ready to refuse her coming into the academy at all, but present Mike convinced him otherwise. Then when time for the exam came, she seemed to demonstrate exceptional control and potential. He found her and her family confusing for lack of a better word. Rei bounded back to Ashido and Hagakure, the three of them exchanging little nudges and high fives. After her came Midoriya, who stood with the ball in his hand, looking more nervous than a sheep in wolf's den. The timid boy threw his ball, but it barely went anywhere, even though he was seemingly trying his best. As he began to mumble to himself, Aizawa interrupted him. I erased your quirk. His hair and scarf defied gravity as they floated around him. Someone with a quirk as impractical as yours should have never been enrolled here. Their teacher went on to berate the exam, and how Midoriya would never be a hero if he relied on people saving him from his own quirk. Suddenly, his hair and scarf fell back into their original places, the teacher moving away from him. The freckled boy looked distraught, shoulders slacked and head down. Mr. Aizawa really must have brought him down with what he said. but I can relate. I guess we both have potentially dangerous quirks. But even so, he still has to try. You can do it, 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏, Raelynn yelled, a couple people around her jumping at the sudden exclamation. Just try your best. He looked in her direction, a weary but hopeful smile on his face. He gave her a little nod before turning back to focus on the task. It took him a few moments, but he chucked the ball again and managed to reach a whole 705. 3 meters. He turned to Aizawa, his fingers black and broken. See that, Mr. Aizawa? I'm still standing. Raylynn's nose flared in excitement, gently rocking back and forth on her heels. It wasn't much she did, but she knew how much a little encouragement could take someone. Worked every time when Lydia did it during her training. As the class started to move on and self-discuss, Raelynn kept an eye on 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 cradling his finger. Before she could make a move to try and help, their teacher was calling out to them. Time for your results. Aizawa hummed. A hard light hologram of a leaderboard appeared in front of the class. Raelynn eagerly scanned the board for her name, but didn't have to look too far. She earned her spot as 4th place, right under a kid named Katsuki Bakugo. The girl looked at the ashy blonde who had been arguing with the navy-haired, glasses kid earlier that morning. Practically everyone knew Bakugo's name and appearance after he had a sudden outburst at 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 when he took his throw. Looking at him now, he seemed pissed off even more. Who spit in his breakfast this morning? I don't get how someone could be so angry at a competition. He's not the one who has to worry about going home. The girl turned back to the leaderboard, attempting to associate names with faces and see who was leaving their class. Though before she could look at the bottom, the hologram fizzled out. And I lied. No one is going home today. Aizawa flashed them a self-entertained smile. I only said it so everyone would have a little more motivation to prove themselves. I suggest spending the time you have left of your school day to get to know one another. That is all. Their teacher casually turned and walked away. The minute he was out of earshot, the class let out a sigh of relief. People began to approach one another, all interested in learning more about their classmates' abilities. Raelynn found herself heading over to the more talkative groups, congratulating some people, learning new names, and asking about quirks. Hey! The voice was rough and loud. Ray whipped around in curiosity, only to see a wild Bakugo stomping towards her. Yeah, she raised an eyebrow, puzzled that he was even talking to her. His nostrils flared, stopping only a couple feet in front of her. He studied her smaller frame, slightly intrigued that someone as small as her could hold all that power in her body. Just because you can throw a damn ball farther than me doesn't mean you're more powerful than I am. I'll get better than you and this entire class of useless wannabes. He stalked off to go and get changed, roughly bumping against her as he went. Ray stumbled back and was luckily caught by Kaminari, who helped her back up on her feet. What's that guy's deal? He shouldn't be that rude. The blonde commented, making sure Raelynn was stable. Definitely not acting like a man. I mean, what kind of man bumps into a woman like that? Kirishima added in, shaking his head. Ray regained her composure and grabbed her shoulder, smiling at both of their comments. It's fine. Maybe he's just having an off day. She looked towards his direction, watching the door to the lockers close behind him. Nevertheless, he does have a good idea. I'm gonna get changed out of these sweaty clothes. The boys nodded and waved to her as she left, leaving her to her thoughts. He was one of the few at the very top of their class, so why was he focusing on someone who was technically below him? Nonetheless, it brought out some of Raylynn's more guilty pleasures, competition. She had to prove herself. She needed to be better. Raelynn needed to win. Fine. He wants to try and be better than me. He's not gonna get that chance. I will be better than you. Katsuki Bakugo. Get ready to train. Chapter text. Like Uraraka had said, the class had missed the entire student orientation because of the impromptu test. The first day ended pretty quickly, students flooding out of the building and heading home. Some kids casted side glances at those in class when unsure of what to make of them. Making her way to the same limousine that had dropped her off that morning, Raelynn felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. Her heart practically jumped out of her chest, easily startled by little things. Pausing her music and taking her earbuds out of her ears, she turned to see who had disrupted her. Hey, you probably don't remember me, but I'm the girl you bumped into this morning. I'm also in class 10 with you. Name's 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏, just Kim if we're cool. The girl brushed her silver and charcoal bangs to the side, a little half-smile on her face. Raelynn nodded. No, I remember. Her lips squiggled into a sheepish smile, shifting from foot to foot. I'm really sorry about that. I should have been paying attention like you. Kimmy raised her index finger up to stop her, looking as if she were on the verge of laughter. "Girl, you can chill. It's whatever." She popped a bubble with her gum. "I might have thought you were some brainless dipshit. But when I saw you in my class and get 4th in the assessment, I figured you were pretty cool." Ray was unsure of how to respond, not sure if she was being complimented, insulted, or both. Kimmy took Raylynn's pause to sling her arm around the girl's shoulder, walking them forward and further away from the school. "And since I think you're pretty cool, that makes you my friend. So Ray, can I call you that? I'm too lazy to take the time and call you Raelynn or Byeong-Ho all the time, so I'll just stick with it. Anyways, what's up with you and the blonde bastard 𝗵𝘃𝗁? Why didn't you stand up to him?" The pink-haired teen flared her nose in thought. When he came up to her, she immediately lost all sense of language. It was just so random and intense. Plus, she had been too tired to think after the test, her quirk exhausting her body. Even though she found it rude, it lit a fire in her. She had always been excited to compete when it came to anything like sports, but it was always on a calmer level. But the boy's blunt words made her heartbeat run, pushing herself to prove her strength to the blowhard and even try to surpass him. It was just unexpected, you know? He came out of nowhere, said what he said, and left. My guess was that he was just being hard on himself for some weird reason. Or, you know, she shrugged with a smile, he doesn't like 2 girls being better at throwing a ball than him? One of those weird guy things. Kimmy pouted, puffing up her dead pale cheeks, as if expecting another answer. "I think he was just being a frustrated dustball. Just cause he's the kid that was able to resist being captured by a villain for a couple minutes. He probably thinks he's hot shit or whatever." They reached the gate when the taller girl let go of the shorter. "Well, I'll see you tomorrow, new bestie." She gave her a smirk and took a left, walking off, Raelynn staring at her retreating figure. What just happened? Is that what friend making is? Putting her earbuds back in, Ray slid into the car, the vehicle taking off. Tilde 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 I am here. The door to Class 1 almost flew off its hinges as the number 1 hero himself, All Might, burst through them. He marched forward, simply his presence bringing a smile on everyone else's faces. The hero whipped around to face his class, his iconic face smiling back at them. Raelynn was practically buzzing around in her seat, amber aura steadily increasing. How could someone not feel excited when All Might was around? His presence was calming but energizing, and he was a living legend. Even though she knew he was teaching their class from details in her acceptance letter, it was still mind-blowing. Meeting idol number 3 off the bucket list. Next. Ooh, any of my other 7 idols. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Hero Basic Training, the most important class in this school. Here, you'll learn everything you need to be a pro. This year is going to be long and hard. That's why we're not wasting any time and getting right to it. All Might whipped out a card, the word battle written in bold on it. Today, we pull no punches. The entire class broke out into conversation. I really can't believe All Might is actually here, teaching us, Kaminari gushed, turning back to talk to Kirishima. Long and hard. Minta snickered to himself. My entire body has goosebumps. Ajuro smiled. Zero turned back to Raelynn, big smile on his face per usual. You look like you're about to burst from excitement. Hints of a Spanish accent slipped through, earning a smile from the girl. Honestly? Probably. Fight training. Bakugo growled in glee. But one of the main parts of being a hero is looking the part. He gestured both of his arms to the right side of the class, the wall opening up to display the boxes to their hero suits. Put these on and meet me out in Battlegrounds Beta. Tilde 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 tilde. A low drum echoed in the tunneled walkway, the sound of footsteps walking into the battleground area. The sun's rays beat down on tall buildings, light flooding over the urban-styled area. Emerging from the tunnel came the students of Class 1, decked out in their personalized costumes. They came to a stop in front of All Might, who seemed to be smiling wider, if that was even possible. Alright, ready yourselves, young heroes, cause today you're going to have to give it your all. He started. Like I said earlier, you will be working on battle training. But let me explain further. All Might spoke to his pupils, taking a deep breath. You will all be put into teams of 2, and 2 teams will face one another. One team acting as the heroes, the other acting as the villains. The villains will be prot. To Raelynn, All Might's voice melded into sounds of pure nonsense, as if a broken television set were still attempting to play a program. her hands nitpicked at the sparkly, orange costume miniskirt, pulling at it so it would end to her mid-thigh and hopefully stay there. Her focus abruptly shifted to her similarly colored crop top, fiddling with a single, wide strap across her shoulder that kept it up. Ray's body prickled with pins and needles, shifting her bare feet against the gravel road. She winced softly as a rock poked against the vulnerable flesh of her heel, regrets of her costume choices seeping into her busy mind. Geez, this was a mistake. I should have listened to Lydia's advice about just getting sandals or something for my hero costume. But it wouldn't have worked anyway. If I wanted to be able to use my powers through my feet, then I'd need them uncovered cause any shoes would just get burnt to a crisp. I wonder if anyone thinks that me being barefoot is weird. I mean, no one else is. I wonder if my feet look weird. Young Byung-Ho. The distracted girl jumped out of her skin at the hero's bellowing, looking up at him. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Ray's tongue stumbled over the words, ashamed that she had barely heard a word of what he had said. He let out a deep chuckle, the burning sensation on her cheeks intensifying. I was explaining that since there are 22 of you and the lottery drew things differently, you and young Mai will have to fight one-on-one. Hope you two are up for the challenge. Now, it's time for Team A versus Team B. As the teams get ready, the rest of us will head to the basement. Ray looked around for Kimmy as everyone shambled after all might to the first building. The taller female was already staring at Raelynn, a smirk that screamed, "I'm going to kick your ass," spread over her face. Ray's lips curled into a half smile, her hand coming up to swipe at her nose. "Good luck," she mouthed. A pair of scarlet eyes watched Raylynn's little exchange, a flicker of anger in them. The corners of Bakugo's mouth briefly quirked up as if to snarl, before going back to his persistent frown, turning away to focus on strategizing how to beat Midoriya into a pulp. It was time to get the trials started. Their starting line chapter text team after team fought against one another, some rounds ending more unexpectedly than others. Raelynn watched in awe as she saw everyone's quirks being used to their full potential. But after the first 5 minutes of a round started, she soon lost interest, only tuning in if something eye-catching took place. In the time between, she whispered to Kaminari, who originally whispered a joke that had caught her ear. Since then, the two quietly poked some fun and snickered about some costumes and whatever commentary they could think about what was going on. The two looked around the room, Ray's eyes finally falling on a sulking Bakugo who stood by his lonesome in the darkened corner. Since his brutal fight with Midoriya, he hadn't yelled at anyone. The blonde was unsettlingly quiet, eyes narrowed and focused on the big screen projecting the fights, but downcast whenever they moved locations. She was completely confused. Bakugo put up a good fight, but he was pouting like a hot-headed 2-year-old because he lost. She looked up to Kaminari, her face scrunched up into a pout. "You think Bakugo's gonna be okay?" The boy turned to look back at the person in interest. "Why do you care about that rude dandelion's feelings? He was an asshat to you yesterday." Ray punched Kaminari's upper arm, the older boy wheezing out a laugh at the barely half-hearted attack. "Don't call him names," she hissed playfully. "Sure, he was kinda aggressive, but it's not like he hurt me or something. And look at his face, he looks like a kicked puppy." The electric blonde stared at her for a second before exploding. Kaminari completely lost his shit, his body convulsing with laughter. He didn't know what it was about the big, bad Bakugo being compared to a kicked puppy, but after all the laughing they had done today, he couldn't keep it down to soft giggles anymore. Ray couldn't help but join in with him, his laughter infecting her body like a disease. It spread throughout her, coming out as breathy giggles and wheezes, the occasional snort thrown in. Heads swiveled around in confusion and attempted to find the source of laughter, wondering why anyone would be cackling at a time like this. Even All Might grew curious, his head weaving around to look behind him. The two chortling teens tried to stop themselves, but one knowing look at one another threw them into another fit. They clutched at their stomachs, their sides strangling themselves in the best way possible. "Kicked puppy? He looks like a depressed chihuahua." The blonde's voice pushed out through hard chuckles. Ray almost fell on her ass. The laughter, her sides, her cheeks, and lack of air hurt, but she never wanted it to stop. The students surrounding them were obviously confused but started to grow concerned. Are these guys losing it already? It's only the second day of classes. All Might was concerned as well, parting his lips to say something when the building above them gave a sudden tremor. Turning back to the screen, the words leaving his breath and mind, the pro was met with two people wrapped up in capture tape, while the other team stood above them. Team E wins. Now it's time for our last two teams, K and L. Let's get going. The students began to filter out of the basement, their attention refocused. Raelynn and Kaminari trailed behind the rest, taking gulps of precious oxygen. By the time everyone reached the surface, the pair had managed to calm down. The afternoon sun had risen higher and burned brighter, the training ground's temperature heating up. Byung-Ho and Mai, please go ahead to your spots at your assigned building. All Might's voice boomed throughout the area. The two girls nodded and walked ahead together. There was a subtle, growing tension between the two, the air slowly becoming thick and heavy. With each step, the more uncomfortable Raelynn became, flicking small glances at her competition. Kimmy's costume was a simple, sleeveless bodysuit held together by the ties around her neck, and the same gray color as her eyes, accompanied by white and steel buckles around her waist. Her dark gray boots made a light stomping noise against the gravel, her thin, toned body strutting confidently to their building. Her eyes were bright, yet darkened by the ink-black mascara around them. Ray furrowed her short eyebrows. She's so confident. She probably has a right to be. For all I know, she could be the most powerful in the class. I didn't really notice her during the quirk test. God, what if she's so much more competent and smarter at this stuff than I am? Eventually, Raelynn got caught staring, a deer in headlights. Kimmy's cold gaze peered into Raelynn, easily reading the cries of doubt and anxiety on her face. A low snicker came from the pale girl, her gray and black streaked hair dancing around her head as she shook it. What are you so worried about? You got in here on a recommendation anyway. You'll probably wipe the floor with me. She rolled her eyes, her mint gum making a high-pitched snap in her mouth. To be honest, if you didn't do that, it would be a little strange, almost shameful. Those gray eyes shot back down at Raelynn, a glimmer of glee dancing around in them. Ray's face stung as if she had taken a slap to the face. Her chest tightened, her jaw locking uncomfortably as she walked in silence. Her feelings bubbled against her skin, her doubts and insecurities amplifying. Before she could even build a sentence together to respond, Kimmy continued. You know something? I think you're underestimating everyone in Class 1A. First, you get here on a recommendation which is incredibly rare. And then during the quirk test you place only 4th place, when I think we both know you could have gotten 2nd, or even 1st. Do you think we aren't on the same level as you? That we don't deserve to see your power and potential? She snorted in annoyance, stopping a few feet away from the entrance of their assigned building. If what I've said is true, then get rid of the bullshit ignorant, anxiety act. It makes you look disgustingly weak. With those words dissipating into the air, Kimmy disappeared into the darkened entrance of the tall, windowed building. The lanky female made her way up a staircase tucked in a corner, fingers grazing against the cool metal walls. After checking a few rooms, she found the one with the bomb. Surrounding it were glass windows lining almost every inch of wall and multiple wooden crates. As Kimmy got to work, she thought back on her conversation with Raelynn, a determined scowl wrinkling her features. I need to know what she's really capable of. Saying that stuff was rude, but she's not 3, she'll get over it. Plus, she'll be after my head, throw caution out the window, and come at me full power. But, like anyone, it should make her careless, and she has no idea of what I can do. Make her sloppy and clumsy, make it a good win for me, and label me as part of the top of the class. She chuckled to herself, a sly smirk curling up on her thin lips. Good luck, Ray. You're gonna need it. Tilde 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 tilde. Bright light filled the room in a flash, the footage from the cameras placed around the building coming alive. All Might fiddled with the device in his ear, turning it off and taking it out. A light burst of noise from the world above them filled the basement. Since it's a one-on-one battle, the hero addressed his class. They don't need any earpieces, and will be able to hear what's going on the entire time from both sides. I wonder who's going to win this round. All the wins today have been so surprising, Ochako piped up as she eyed the screen. Zero stroked his chin. Raelynn seems like the way to go. Girl was practically bouncing out of her seat before the trials, and she did place pretty high in that test Mr. Aizawa gave us. Yeah, my bet's on Byung-Ho too. A nasal lisp came from Minta, staring at the girl's exposed thighs. Her costume shows all the right stuff. Very plus ultra. Everyone shuddered at the comment, tolerance for the tiny purple teen already withering away. Speaking of it, her costume itself might be the issue. Takoyami's voice came out low, but still loud enough for his classmates to hear and turn to face him. It doesn't seem helpful at all, especially by leaving her feet bare and most of her skin dangerously exposed. Some people nodded, moving on from the pink-haired shorty. I believe I might win this one. Yaoyorozu spoke up. She stared at the pale female as Kimmy adjusted the crates in the room, eyebrows knitted together. She seems more like an underdog in the situation, and that could push her to winning. But on the other hand, her quirk is hard for me to grasp because I haven't seen it in action yet. I think she might win. I don't know, something about Mai makes her seem really smart. Sato spoke, looking deep in thought. Maybe she has a strategy to outsmart Byeong-Ho the whole time like 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 did earlier. A hum of agreement came from those who probably thought the same. Others stayed quiet, unable to see who could possibly come out on top. As All Might began the time, the room was filled with sporadic flashes of amber light. Loud, delayed bangs echoed throughout the room from the sound system in the basement, the original sounds softening into violent thuds from above their heads. The students gazed in slight shock at the screen, except for one. From in the corner of the basement stood an irritated Bakugo. The voices in his head spoke over one another, practically screaming at this point. First, Deku beats him at what he's supposed to be best at. Then that ice kid Todoroki shows off tremendous amounts of power. Finally, the cherry on top, this tiny girl shows off a quirk that worked awfully similar to his own. Bakugo was supposed to be the best out of all these idiots, so why were these people so far above him? His pride couldn't handle so many hits in one day, his muscles flexing and ready to lash out at someone. But deep, deep down inside, there was a sliver of respect for her. The fire in her emerald eyes as she pushed forward, and her power fluctuating around her, sparked some kind of curiosity for her. It almost made him smirk. Almost. Tilde 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 Raelynn felt an unfamiliar burn arise in her throat, remnants of it spreading to her limbs. Her skin burned as if she were next to a volcano. The feeling was hotter than anything she had ever felt. She wanted to scream, to cry, to explode, and just burn out. Something she was never supposed to do. It makes you look disgustingly weak. The words buzzed around her head. They were thousands of little flies and mosquitoes hellbent on bothering her until they died, or she simply gave up. Her thoughts began to race once more as blood rushed in her ears, wanting to rush ahead. Her body subconsciously took action, soaking in the rays of light from the sweltering sun that was beating down on the area. The pink-haired girl stared at the door in determination, eagerly bouncing from one foot to the other. A fire was raging inside of Raylynn's chest, and any thoughts of trying to keep control were long gone. The competition was on. Teams K and L, your time starts now. Amber light encircled both of Ray's fists, one of them lunging forward at the door. In a swift movement, the door flew off of its hinges with a loud clatter, the tan skin on her knuckles beginning to darken. Wasting no time, she sprinted into the unknown, fluidly rounding corner after corner. She managed to burst down half of the doors on the first floor. She huffed in anger, the amber light growing stronger at the forceful output. "This is getting me nowhere," she yelled, taking a breath and closing her eyes in an attempt to think. "I need a way to see her without wasting any more time." Something in Ray's subconscious clicked, taking over her mind and situation for only a few moments. When she opened her eyes, the light from her quirk was gone, and the world in her eyes had plunged into darkness. "What the hell? What the hell? What the hell?" Panicked utters rushed out of her mouth. She desperately swiveled around, trying to understand what was happening. Is this my enemy's doing? How'd she find me so fast? I mean, I was being pretty loud with those doors. Crap, it can't end like this. It was only when she saw a white figure, something shaped like a skeleton, walking not too far above her did she focus back in. Kimmy. As anger rushed through her veins again, the world slowly regained its color and solidity for Ray. Her arms flexed and pounded, the amber aura around her hands deepening in intensity and growing larger. The furious female rushed around until she found a set of stairs leading upstairs, pounding up them at lightning speed, keeping the mental image of where that figure was located. It luckily only took 3 to 4 more doors getting bust open, until Raelynn found one that didn't snap open like a twig. The door bent in half, but something blocked the hinges from snapping off. She raised a glowing foot above her head, bringing it down to beat against the crippled metal. The door finally flew back, pushing the crates back with it. There were sharp pains in Raylynn's ankle, the skin around it darkening a poisonous green and a sickly grape color. But with the adrenaline rushing in her ears and coaching her on to the end, the pain was practically non-existent. As dust and dirt particles swirled around the smaller room, Ray bit down on her lip and held her breath, attempting to prevent hacking up and losing to her own lungs. Through narrowed eyes, Raelynn finally came face to face with her targets. The two females stared at one another. the room growing dense with tension and hot with anger. Kimmy stood tall and proud, the fake bomb looming over her, while Ray was crouched but ready to pounce. They didn't speak a word, but their eyes were in a heated argument filled with glares. "Welcome to my lair, hero." Kimmy chuckled, shifting her weight onto one leg and placing a hand on her hip. "Hope you're ready to lose." Ghosts. Chapter text. You found me a lot faster than I had anticipated. Guess you aren't as incompetent as I thought. Kimmy sauntered a few steps forward, staring down at Raelynn. "Maybe you are worth your recommendation." The pink-haired girl could feel her temples pulse. "But you're still an idiot for thinking you could face me." Ray's eyebrow twitched. "HMPH, the smug silver and charcoal-haired teen exhaled. "You're too weak to win." A loud scream erupted from Raylynn's throat, her emotions rushing out of her body. She lunged forward, her energy-charged fist aiming for Kimmy's nose. In a blink, Mai was completely gone. The lost momentum stumbled Ray forward, almost face-planting. Her head swiveled frantically, searching for her adversary. The room was unsettlingly cold, but none of the windows had opened. "Show yourself. You can't talk all that crap and not back eye." Suddenly, the wind was knocked out of her lungs, her stomach clenching in agony from the sudden hit. She backed up a few feet, bumping against some extra boxes and crates. A few feet in front of her, a pale and wispy outline began to gain color, shades of stormy gray and ink black growing deeper and vivid. Eventually Kimmy had returned in front of Raelynn, her figure full and solid once more, protecting the explosive. "I told you, Ray. You don't have what it takes to beat me." Kimmy Mai. Quirk, Wraith. This power allows the user to have two forms, a human one and a ghost one. In ghost form, Kimmy can turn transparent, practically invisible, and make herself and objects intangible for only 5-10 minutes. With a little more concentration, she can even levitate above the ground. "Isn't that spooky?" Cold, calculating eyes stared down into rage-fueled ones, Kimmy quietly studying Raelynn. After the first blow, Ray kept trying to rush her opponent, each met with a punch to the torso or face. Ragged but soft pants echoed throughout the room, the two at a little stalemate. It was easy to tell her emotions were making Raelynn reckless, but there was a growing aura around her that heated up the room. Whatever she was holding back in the quirk test was gone, raw energy seeping out of Ray's body, absorbing more light from the fluorescent lights on the ceiling. "So?" Kimmy's voice interrupted the heavy breathing. "What are you gonna do, bestie? I'm not gonna let you touch this rocket, and you're not gonna be able to capture me in that tape. It's easy to tell you're fast, but in this room, you're limited." Raylynn's nostrils flared in displeasure, her face curling up into itself. Her emerald eyes dashed around the room, looking for anything useful. Crates were scattered around the area along with regular cardboard boxes, while the crates that had blocked her entry were nothing more than broken pieces of wood. Her lips curled into smirk, her body glowing again. Dashing over to the crates, hands still aflame, Ray gripped onto one crate and hoisted it up before slamming it down in front of Kimmy. Sawdust and splinters exploded around her, the tall girl jumping back to try and avoid it. Raylynn's lungs burned at the sudden particles in the air and let out a hoarse cough, but bit her lip hard to stop any more from coming out. Without hesitation, Byung-Ho chucked another crate at Mai, not wanting to give her time to think. Kimmy's head suddenly disappeared, but the rest of her body couldn't keep up, roughly getting slammed down by the crate's impact. Her body crashed down to the ground, a low groan coming from her. Kimmy slowly came to her feet, her head swirling back into visibility, knowing that the time was running down. Ray's soles and hands burned brighter. The usually amber aura became practically pure white. The girl lunged for her competition, both hands raised into fists. Panic flashed in Kimmy's face before trying to ready herself. As she tried to make her torso disappear, Raelynn boosted herself and opened up her hands to grab onto Kimmy's arms. "Get your hot potato ass hands off of me," Kimmy screeched, Ray's palms burning against her limbs. Using her lit-up soles, she flew them up a few feet above the floor before spinning them around in circles. The momentum and speed built and built until they were a blur of orange and gray. "You wanted me to let go? Well, here you go." With that, Ray let Kimmy go, her body smashing against the metal wall. Ray dropped back down onto the floor, taking the capture tape out of a pocket in her skirt. Humming a little tune, she skip-limped over to an unconscious Kimmy and dragged her over to the fake bomb. Moments later, Kimmy was firmly wrapped up and taped to the decoy bomb, a smiling Raelynn flinging her arms upward. The horn signaling the end of the battle went off, All Might and the majority of the class staring at the screen. By capturing her enemy and even securing the bomb, Team L, well, Miss Byung-Ho, wins. That was so cool, Ochako exclaimed. You gotta teach me some of those moves. Suro chimed in. You might be pretty small, but that you can pack a manly punch, Byeong-Ho. Kirishima heartily patted the girl's shoulder. You definitely deserved that win after all the smack Mai was talking. Mina grinned, swinging her arm around Ray's shoulders. Raelynn could only awkwardly chuckle at all the compliments, a soft red hue dusting her cheeks. After hobbling out of the building and hearing All Might give his final words for the day, the class had changed and headed back to their classroom. When Kimmy had woken up, her and Ray went to Recovery Girl to get fixed up, the entire walk being deadly quiet. Ray left quickly, only needing some bandages wrapped around her ankle and fingers after the nurse's kisses. Kimmy, on the other hand, had to stay longer to treat the mild second-degree burns she got from the fight. When Raelynn arrived back to the classroom, there was some soft chatter going on that evolved into battle trial reviews, the first being Ray and Kimmy's. You guys are seriously too sweet, but that was just luck and determination. All the other battles were way more interesting and showed how awesome you guys' quirks are, like how Suro and Kirishima protected their bomb from Tokoyami and Tsuyu. She looked around the room, catching a glimpse of ash blonde hair. Or how Uraraka and Izuku duked it out against Ida and Bakugo. That took real guts. The teen enthused. The class chorused an agreement, discussing some of the earlier trials. Raelynn tried to follow along with the conversation, but part of her mind was elsewhere. Specifically, the angry teen she had just mentioned. Bakugo was in his seat, his face down and body eerily idle. He was acting a lot like the stoic Todoroki, who was also seated at his desk, instead of participating in the discussions. Just the day before, Bakugo had been making more noise than a broken bulldozer. But this silence was completely different. Raylynn's body tingled, body lightly swaying to his direction. I want to ask him what's wrong. That seems like a decent thing to do, especially when he looks that upset. Or maybe making fun of him with Kaminari is making me feel guilty. Even if I did try talking to him, what the hell would I even start the conversation with? I don't know how to talk to 𝗬𝗵𝗲. What do you think you're staring at? Bakugo's low words snapped her out of her head, not even realizing that she had been eyeing him the entire time. She stood there, mouth hanging open like a fish out of water. Her last interaction with him hadn't gone all too well, but she wanted to make amends, especially if she was going to push herself to compete with him. Actually using her brain cells, she started to muster together some sentences. Hey Bakugo. She stumbled over her words, but decided to keep going, tightly grabbing her arm with the other to force the words out of her. I really didn't mean to stare, so I'm sorry. I was just thinking back on the fights and wanted to congratulate you. You were super scary the entire time, but still knew what to do and kinda kicked butt. So, congrats. But I was wondering why you were pouting so much after. It was kinda immature looking. His body began to shake, chair screeching loudly as he abruptly stood up. For a second day, he took an intimidating stance before her. Dark red eyes pierced into her green ones. I don't need some nosy random who thinks that she's gonna get the answers she wants just cause she asked nicely. He rolled his eyes and paused to take a breath before going on. I don't need your useless, fucking opinions, so just mind your damn business, talk less, and stay out of my way. All you have to know is that I'm gonna beat you and every other pathetic extra in this class. Anger and frustration coated Bakugo's every word, voice occasionally wavering from the intensity. He stormed past her and the rest of the class afterward, closing the door behind him with a loud slam. Raelynn simply gawked at where the teen once stood. Despite how hostile he was to her, it seemed he was holding his tongue, not completely blowing up in her face. Nonetheless, her feelings were still a bit wounded, her normally joyful demeanor dampening. She wanted to ask more questions, her interest in his abrasive attitude growing. What could make a boy so angry every day? A soft sigh escaped past her lips, but she quickly shook her head, perking back up again with a sweet smile. Raelynn bounded over to Kaminari, Hagakure, Gyro, and Yaoyorozu, waiting until they could be dismissed for the day. This was going to be a long, long year. Tilde 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 Lydia. I'm home. I was thinking we could order from this one noodle shop I saw while walking home today. It smelled way better than whatever burnt ash you cook. Ray shouted, discarding her bag at the door and taking a right to walk into the large, modern kitchen. It's not my fault there's a bug with Lydia's cooking abilities. I'm still trying to fix it. And don't yell so loud or else someone's going to hear that you've been breaking your rules again. Rule number 3. Always take the escorted limo home from anywhere you go. A deep, elderly voice spoke, body hidden by the open refrigerator door. Yeah, sure. I swear you just want to see me waste away to nothing. But since you came out of your sweaty hobbit hole, I guess I can forgive you this time. How are the suits coming along? And since Lydia didn't respond, I'm guessing she's updating. The fridge door closed, revealing a towering 7-foot, bulky, smoke-haired male. Yay, she is. This one might take longer than usual though. I had some ideas. He took a sip of the water he got from the fridge. And these kids don't know how to be grateful. We try to meet their demands as best as possible, but the first days of school come around and suddenly they have new ideas and must needed, state-of-the-art, edgy repairs. Alistair Fayette. His quirk, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. This quirk allows deadly amounts of different kinds of radiation to go through the user and leave them completely unharmed. Once activated, this quirk can last for as long as the user wants. But however long they had it activated is the amount of time they spend paralyzed. Quirks like these come in handy when he's helping to make and modify some of the hero suits that hero course students all over the world send into his 𝗵𝗃𝗲 co-owned support company. Talk about innovation. Raelynn thought back to her own costume, inwardly cringing at herself for the poorly thought out and childish design. After the trial, she felt the need to send it back as fast as possible. A soft giggle came out of her as she propped herself onto the kitchen's island, swinging her legs back and forth as she sat. Hey, ya can't blame 𝗵𝗃𝗲 too much. Us teens are still trying to figure out our quirks and what works for us. Figure it out slower. You kids are too quick nowadays. Alistair groaned and shook his head. What's the shit you like to say? That is what it is. A part of Raelynn died inside, reminding herself to never say any trends around her grandfather again. Yeah, 𝗬𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪. Let's go with that. 𝗬𝗪𝗪𝗪 grandpa in Korean. The two began to laugh at their own idiocy, their laughter overtaking their ears and the kitchen, unable to notice the light beat of high heels against the marble slowly approaching them. A soft snort left Ray's nose, followed immediately by an elephant snort from Alistair. Before they could erupt into a whole new layer of laughter, the presence and mood of the kitchen violently shifted, quickly silencing the two. In the doorway stood a 5'10" woman, her powder white braided hair cascading down to the small of her back. Her golden eyes lingered on the two of them, giving most of her look to Raelynn. The girl didn't need to hear the woman talk to know what that look meant. Time to get back to work. She inwardly sighed. I guess I'll talk with you later, 𝗬𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪. Gotta get to my training, brush up on some of my language courses, my gymnastics. You know, just the usual. Good luck with your work and please tell me when Lydia's back. Ray slowly brought herself down from the island, sheepishly sliding past the two elders to pick up her discarded backpack and go up to her room to get ready. The two adults of the house stared down one another, the frequent tension between them beginning to rise. Grabbing his bottle of water, Alistair walked to the woman. He took a breath only for her to quickly raise her hand to stop him. I don't need you to tell me that I'm putting too much pressure on her. I've heard that speech enough times to memorize it. Her voice was stern, sophisticated but tired, already turning her back on him. I know what I'm doing, sweetheart. She lives with us now and will follow my rules and guidance as such. Raelynn should be grateful for everything I'm giving her. It's not mother knows best anymore. Grandmothers do. Vivian Fayette. Quirk, ethereal. This quirk allows the user to create seemingly limitless amounts and multiple kinds of energy from their own body. The more the user uses this quirk, the more their own body destroys themselves, in which the user must keep their body in excellent condition. If pushed to the total max, their body will dissipate into pure energy. Powerful, but at what cost? The world was bathed in darkness. Her body felt delayed, as if wading through the deep end of a pool. Raelynn couldn't see anything that could possibly be around her, but nonetheless kept moving forward, putting her arms in front of her, so she wouldn't accidentally body slam herself. For a moment she debated trying to use her quirk to light her way, but with no light source to absorb the energy from, she had no way of using it. Soon enough, she tripped over some unseen object, falling onto a rough and prickled surface. Ray tried to stand herself up, but gravity suddenly turned against her, keeping her pinned down to the ground. The atmosphere grew immensely hotter, sweat beading down her forehead and limbs. As the struggle grew harder, the practically inaudible voices that the teen hadn't noticed before were now migraine-inducing. Help us. Why are you doing this? Please stop. Monster. It got to a point of escalating into mindless noise. Cries of extreme anguish and screams of sheer terror racked Ray's mind. They sounded so young, so innocent. The world flashed from black to white, an occasional flash of red appearing in between the two shades. It continued for much longer than the girl could stand, her head pounding even more than before. But eventually the flashes came to a stop, the area around her now a bright white. Raelynn attempted to open her eyes, but the blinding light forced them closed every time she tried. She didn't bother trying to get up. It felt like the weight of the world was still on her shoulders, digging her into the ground. But it didn't take long for the voices to start up again. They were older this time and sounded almost familiar, like trying to remember an old song one used to love. These voices held no fear in their tone. Unlike the other ones, each syllable seemed to ooze with malice and bloodlust despite being able to grasp what words they were. With each shout they grew louder, stepping closer to her to suffocate her. Air felt scarce, and all Raelynn could hear and feel was pure hatred. Suddenly, she heard her name. It rose above everything else, acting like a window of relief. But it was soon getting lost in the loud, jumbled mess of noise. Raelynn, 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 voice rang clear in the teen's ear, jolting her awake from the conflicting dream she was having. Ray's pink hair whipped around as she looked around the nearly deserted classroom of 1A. Her head pounded, still suffering from the strobe effects and loudness of her dreams. Forehead covered in a thin layer of sweat. Same dream since I started school. Why is this wait? Didn't class just start? Where's Mr. Aizawa and the rest of her classmates? As if sensing her confusion, the invisible girl spoke up again. After a short lesson and some class rep stuff, Mr. Aizawa said we were heading to some type of simulation place for hero practice today. When Mina and I looked over to you, you were totally passed out, and I came over to wake you up while everyone was heading out, so Mr. Aizawa wouldn't have to. Geez, Raelynn sighed, running a hand through her bangs. Thanks a million. If Mr. Aizawa woke me up, I probably would have woken up to a note saying expelled. 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 chuckled and turned, headed for the door. We better hurry, everyone's getting geared up in their hero costumes. With that, she was out the door. I can't believe I actually fell asleep in class. Grandma worked me way too hard, especially for a school night. But what else is new? Raelynn stood up and yawned, heading out of the classroom and to the locker rooms. But it's all to get stronger. I have too many promises to keep. Too many to wither out now. �tilde tilde 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 tilde. Raelynn's fingers latched onto her costume skirt, making sure that with each bump that brought her skirt up 1 inch, she immediately pulled it back down 3. After Mina told her about 𝗵𝗃𝗲's comment on her costume during the battle trials, she'd definitely make sure he and anyone else could see nothing more than necessary. At least she was nowhere near the perv, sandwiched between Sato and Midoriya on the bus speeding to their training. Ray had been spending so much time worrying about her costume, she didn't even know what the surrounding groups were talking about. Wanting to feel involved, she tuned into what was going on. You know, Midoriya, your quirk is kinda like All Might's. They're both super powerful and seemingly give you super strength. Ribbit. Tsuyu croaked out, turning to face Midoriya. The short forest green-haired teen let out a series of nervous noises and word vomit, striking curiosity into Raelynn. As she opened her mouth to question it further, Kirishima came in. Whoa, All Might doesn't break himself every time he uses his quirk. That's a huge difference between the two. I just wish I had a flashy quirk like theirs, or like Bakugo's, or Todoroki's, or Raylynn's, he gushed, eyes slowly wandering down. My hardening is practically nothing when compared to those quirks. What do you mean? Your quirk is totally pro-hero material, Raelynn and Midoriya exclaimed. The two looked at one another with an awkward smile as Kirishima beamed with happiness. But yeah, you'd be amazing, Raelynn continued. You know those old Fantastic Four comics? There's this guy made out of rock, but has a heart of gold, but still really powerful. You're just like him. You guys really think so? The redhead looked at his arms, a brief spark of confidence in his eyes, then looked back up at Ray. Thanks. That's it. Ida burst out of nowhere, intensely gazing at Raelynn. Apologies for my outburst, but ever since your performance in the battle trials, there was something similar about you and your quirk. Do you know anything about the former pro-hero? Supernova? Green eyes, white hair if memory serves? Ray stared at Ida in surprise, feeling curious and expectant eyes on her. She had hoped she'd be able to at least get by her first year without anyone making a connection. To have some time living as herself and not in the shadow of the pro. She let out an forced giggle, snaking her hand behind her neck to play with the ends of her high ponytail. Supernova is actually my grandmother and current mentor. Ever since she quit the spotlight, she's been helping me with my quirk and running the #2 support company in Japan with my grandfather. Raelynn recited. She could say those lines in her sleep. Whoa, your grandmother was the top 3 pro hero in her golden age, and then went down to 4th before retiring. Her quirk Ethereal was famous for knocking out villains with one hit of burning energy, but also being a major help in drug busts and sneak attacks by manipulating the electromagnetic spectrum with her quirk. How didn't I realize how similar your quirks are? Midoriya went off, spouting out the basics about the former hero, fingers mimicking the motion of writing in a book. There were a few other impressed mutters and mumblings, some asking about how cool life must be related to a pro hero and other relating questions. Raelynn didn't know whether to be impressed or creeped out, not used to a series of facts being the response to people finding out her lineage. As the questions came, her fingers tangled around her ponytail ends harder, preparing to get the rest of the rehearsed lines ready. Luckily enough, the bus came to a total halt, their teacher announcing they had finally arrived. The second the doors opened, Ray was out of her seat and outside, immediately escaping the conversation. When it came to awkward situations, the pink-haired teen's instinct was to escape as soon as possible, like it never even happened. Moments later, the class made their way into the 𝗧𝗏, greeted by the pro hero, 13. It didn't take long for Midoriya to go off again, spouting fact after fact about the hero. It still weirded Raelynn out, but she couldn't focus on it this time. Her lungs felt like they were on fire, something in the air messing with them. She wanted nothing more than to have a coughing fit. But she didn't want to seem rude or weak, especially in front of a pro. So she fought to keep it in, letting out a soft cough every few minutes, trying to pay attention to their exercise this time. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted, a wave of unseen danger and malice swallowing the entire facility. Down below in the center area, a wine-colored portal appeared before the crystal-watered fountain, a seemingly endless horde of people coming out of it. Bad people. Fear seeped into everyone's minds, the only ones seemingly unaffected being 13 and Aizawa. The older male gripped his scarf, moving his goggles from his neck onto his eyes. Get the kids out of here, 13. This isn't part of the exercise. This isn't a simulation. These are real villains. Of Monsters and Humans chapter text. Being asleep on my desk, unknowingly waiting to look at a note that says I'm expelled on it sounds pretty good right now. Raelynn almost laughed at the thought. But her nerves had sealed up her throat along with the majority of her body. Luckily her legs still worked, slowly backing herself into a corner as villains pressed in on her, slowly surrounding her. She honestly wondered how she even got there. 1 minute Aizawa was rushing into battle and 13 was helping them leave. The next minute, the world went dark purple, and she was slammed into the room of a building that was crumbling at the seams. She wanted to cry out for help, to be swept away from this nightmare and taken back to a safe place with no worries. But this was all too real. And real villains weren't going to let her go. Just one little girl, against the 10 of us. This almost seems unfair. One of them chortled, swinging around some sort of chain weapon. She is pretty good looking though. How mad do you think the boss'll be if we brought back a lil hostage? She could fetch a good price as a ransom, sell her off and split the nice profits. Another spoke. As the group chuckled and nodded, Raylynn's paralyzing nerves dissipated as blinding disgust and anger seeped in. Her hands began to burn, the amber light of her powers illuminating the run-down room. At the sudden light, the villains went back on their guard. Ray slowly bent down, picking up a decent-sized rock, the stone covered in amber light, the second she touched it. I don't know why you're here, but you're going to wish you never came. She suddenly chucked the rock at the first villain who spoke, knocking him a good couple meters away, a trail of steam coming from her hand. This wasn't a test. This wasn't a mock battle. These were real villains. Her intense emotions quickly conquered her mind, adrenaline seizing her limbs and burning through her body. Every exercise she'd learned for control flew out of the window. The girl lunged forward and grabbed a villain's face, sending him crashing below through the floor beneath them. She heard additional noises, but ignored them, thinking they were the villains. As she turned to go for another one, she felt a blunt smack to her chest, her body flying back into the opposite wall. The coughs she had been stifling before came out into broken wheezes and chokes, the pungent, copper tang of blood filling her mouth as the wind got forced out of her lungs. You might have gotten in a couple lucky hits, but you're done for, a cyan-haired girl shouted. As she rushed forward, her arms seemed to morph, changing into curved blades. With no other defense, Raelynn lifted her arms into an X to cover her face. The blades dug into her flesh, slowly getting deeper as she screamed in agony. The pain and panic mixed with her burning emotions, her body going into overdrive. Ray could feel her eyes burn while her vision turned pure orange, feeling as if her pupils were trying to leave her eye sockets. Her ears rang as she felt another scream join hers. The pain of blades lifted from her arms. The orange light left her eyes with a few blinks, finally able to see the girl who attacked her writhing around on the ground. Ray tried her best to put what just happened out of her mind, focusing back on the 7 other villains she had to deal with. Her hands lit up again, punching in the direction of her enemies. Forceful bolts of hot energy left her fists, hitting each target square in the chest, some of them flying through the windows and plummeting to the ground below. Blood rushed in Raylynn's ears, walking towards the villain who made the hostage comment, him being the last one still conscious. "Get away from me. You're some sort of fucking monster." Something ticked in Raylynn's mind, the screams from her dreams flooding her mind, the darkness rapidly seeping back in. Everything was clear, but muddled at once, a flux of confusion, anger, and guilt flooding her soul. She let out a cough, a clump of blood dropping to the floor. Ray stopped in front of him, snatching him by the collar of his shirt, and using the energy from her powers to lift him off the ground. Her arms seared with pain, but she kept him up. "Monster. A monster wouldn't show mercy like the kind I'm reluctantly giving you. Now, tell me why the hell you're attacking my friends. If not, then I'll show you just how much of a monster I can be." Raylynn's voice was raw and dark, strikingly different from the sweet, light-hearted tone she always had. The villain stared at her in fear. "We're here to take down All Might. The guy with the blue hair said that bird thing of his could take down the symbol of peace. That's all I know, I swear. Please let me go." Raelynn almost shit a brick. They have a way to take down All Might. That's impossible. They couldn't do that, could they? Not wanting to see him any longer, she tossed the disgusting villain down the hole she created earlier when slamming down the other one. "Who the hell keeps dumping their trash down here?" A very familiar voice screamed from down below. "I really wish I was asleep right now." Tilde 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 tilde. "Raelynn, are you sure you're gonna be okay? Looks like you're bleeding a lot." Kirishima asked, slightly out of breath. After Raelynn dropped down from her floor to Kirishima and Bakugo's, she let them in on the villain's plan. Wanting to save up their quirk energy, they decided on running all the way back to the center area. Beyond that, they honestly had no plan other than to go in guns blazing. What did one expect from a couple of first years? "Yeah," Ray choked as she started to trail behind them. "I'm just as tough as you guys, so I'll be fine," Bakugo growled, briefly turning back to look at the two. "There's a line between being tough and not knowing your fucking limit. Don't come along just to slow us down." The pink-haired female flared her nostrils and forced herself to move faster, while absorbing more energy from any light in the area. Slowly but surely, her amber glow returned around her body. Raelynn felt the need to prove herself, show to them that she was just as strong as they are. Suddenly, Bakugo was out of sight. Explosions rang in the air as he nailed down the smoking portal figure who transported them in the first place. The air grew cold as Todoroki's ice traveled in front of them, wrapping around some kind of bird-like beast. When Raelynn turned to look at Kirishima, he was already jumping up and heading for the blue-haired villain. Wanting in on the attack, Raylynn's souls lit up and used them to launch herself up into the air as well. As Shigaraki dodged Kirishima's attack, she came hurtling down, hands ablaze and clasped together to slam down on his back. There was a soft crack from his body as he fell to his knees from the sudden impact. Ray quickly changed her trajectory and flipped backwards to her classmates. "Aw, come on. You didn't have to show me up like that." Kirishima whined playfully, looking down at her. "Sounds like a personal problem, Kiri." She skidded to a stop, coughing as the dust and dirt kicked up around her. As Midoriya made his way over to them, All Might stepped past the group of teens, his seemingly ever-present smile nowhere to be seen. One hand held his blood-stained side, while the other shot a thumbs up at them. "I thank you for the assistance, but this is my job. It's time to show you, and these villains, what it really means to go beyond. Plus ultra." The boys and Raelynn could only stare in complete awe as All Might fought the anti-symbol of peace Namu, completely obliterating the beast to the point of sending it flying through the roof. Raelynn was still reeling in admiration, even when the principal showed up with the rest of 𝐸's teaching staff. Gunshots rang through the air as Shigaraki fell to the ground, Kurogiri managing to protect him and teleport themselves out of sight. As everyone was being rounded up and checked on, Raelynn couldn't help but keep her eyes glued on the hole where the Namu was shot out of, her mind replaying the fight. That is what I have to aim for. That kind of strength. That kind of control. That's a hero. Tilde 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 tilde. The bus ride back to the school was dead quiet. A few mutters fluttered around but soon died down. Instead of being near the front, Raelynn had found a seat near the back after getting basic treatment to the deep gnashes on her arms. Unfortunately, she had the pleasure of the only vacant seat being next to 𝗵𝘃𝗁. Raelynn had no idea how to interact with him after 2 failed attempts, and she was too tired to risk getting yelled at, so silence it was. As the sun began to set, exhaustion seeped into Raylynn's body. She was so hyped up on adrenaline and her own absorbed energy that she didn't even realize how tired her body was, almost going over her limit. Soon enough, she passed out in her window seat, head leaning back against her padded seat. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 looked over at the girl beside him, staring down at the white bandages wrapped around both of her forearms. His gaze traveled up to her face, looking at the dirt and bruises decorating her cheeks and forehead. There was a sudden bump, jostling Raylynn's body, her head slumping over to rest on 𝗵𝘃𝗁's shoulder. He raised his opposite arm to push her off when the sunset's rays shone down on her, her skin lighting up. She was almost ethereal. Her face was small, her high and full cheeks giving her face a cute chubby effect. Her lips were still glossed a little, the pale pinkness of them matching the ends of her soft pink ombre hair. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 almost wanted her to wake up to see her emerald eyes light up in the sun, just to complete the picture. But this was just as satisfying. The day's events replayed in his mind, thinking of how she came down from the floor above him and Kirishima, after taking down 10 thugs by herself. Hell, she even managed to get a hit the blue-haired boss behind the whole attack. The blonde normally didn't underestimate people around him, especially his classmates. But with this girl, her perseverance and power kept blowing out his expectations. She was becoming an anomaly in this class to him, and it was getting obnoxious. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 put down his opposite arm, using it as a chin rest to stop looking at her. He let out a soft grunt, forcing his mind to try and think of something else. He closed his eyes. The picture of her sleeping in the sunset's light coming back to him imprinted his mind. She just looked pretty in the moment. Even 𝗵𝘃𝗁 could appreciate something like that and be done with it, right? He groaned again, muttering something under his breath. Guess you aren't so useless after all. Sunshine. Wait, what the fuck did I just say? Bright light shone on Raylynn's closed eyes, soon waking her up. As her eyelids fluttered open, a tall feminine figure fluidly moved around her, opening the drapes in the room to bring in the morning sunlight. The woman set something down on a table and turned to look at Raelynn, a low sigh coming out of her. Practically a conditioned response, Ray braced herself for what she had to say. Welcome back to the land of the living. You had an energy crash, didn't you, Raelynn? It masked like a question, but Raelynn knew better. Vivienne's stern voice immediately pushed the teen from the comfort of her sheets, pushing herself to look as presentable as possible in bed. She took a quick survey of her surroundings, the whipped cream-colored walls and baby blue vanity next to her sunflower backpack in her room comforting her. Raelynn looked over to the woman, a slight wave of fear coming over her body. She could feel the disappointment coming from the older woman. Hello, grandmother. Thank you for taking care of me, but how did I get home? Last time I checked, I was on the bus headed back to you, eh? Ray grabbed her head, looking at the bandages on her arms in slight awe. Whoa, she muttered. The older woman huffed, taking Ray's hands and stretching them out to inspect the bandages. When sated, she let them fall and walked to the room's doors, not even lifting an eyebrow at Raylynn's hiss at the dull pain. She brushed off her midnight blouse and placed a hand on the doorknob. Every moment was precise and clean, not an ounce of energy wasted in even the most simplest of tasks. Smart to be grateful, but it was Lydia who cared for your wounds. A black-haired teacher and a blonde one with tacky sunglasses came over with a few medics. Said there was an attack. I almost sued the lot of them for negligence, but seeing how you handled yourself, it seems like you brought your injuries upon yourself. The bedroom door gave a loud squeak as she opened it. Practically the entire class was left unharmed, but you had to be a part of the exception. Therefore, your training will be doubled from now on. Now get up and take your meds or else you'll be late for school. You've been out for 3 days. With a few clicks of her stiletto heels and a light slam of the door, her grandmother was gone. Raelynn swiped at her nose, letting her grandmother's words wash over her mind. She's right. I'm useless right now. I can't win a fight without getting banged up. The only reason I won was cause that thingy happened with my eyes. I don't even want to know what the hell that was. All this training she's given me, and I still don't have control over this stupid quirk. At this rate, I'll never be strong, never earn forgiveness, never make them proud. Tossing her sheets aside, she got up from her bed and reached over to take the pill bottle left for her. She stared at the orange cylinder, her jaw tightening as she read over the prescription. 800 milligrams of 𝗧𝗪𝗓. Take twice daily to prevent wheezing, coughing, shortness of breath, and asthma attacks. Guess the prescription went up, Ray muttered. In a fluid motion, she got up from her bed and bent down to lift the covers draped over the side of her circular bed. Under her bed was a sea of similar orange bottles that rippled when she tossed the medication into it. Not wanting to be late, per her grandmother's wishes, she let go of her sheets and headed off to get ready for the school day. This year, we will be having the sports festival a little early. Principal 𝗵𝘃𝗬 believes it'll be better to have it after this villain attack to show our academy is stronger than ever. Your classmates have already begun training on the P.E. grounds. But since you're just getting back, don't overdo it. All Might's voice rang through Raylynn's head as she changed out of her school uniform into her training one. She had so many questions on why the faculty would think that's a good idea in the long run. But she didn't want to bother or dare question the busy #1 hero. As she headed out of the girls' locker room, another girl bumped into her. "Ray, we gotta stop meeting like this. One of us is gonna end up hurt." Kimmy chuckled, popping a bubble right after. "Hey Kimmy, sorry for Kim. I told you to call me Kim, bestie." "Oh, yeah, Kim, sorry. Sorry for bumping you. I didn't look where I was going. How are you? I wanted to check in with you after the attack, but I think I passed out before I could." Kimmy raised an eyebrow, shifting her weight to rest it on one foot. "I mean, everyone was kinda shaken up. We were facing real villains for fuck's sake. But I guess this is all part of the job, right?" "Yeah, you're right. I'm just glad that you're okay. Where did you land?" "HM. What are you talking about?" Ray coughed. "When that villain transported us everywhere, I think I saw you get caught up in the purple mist too. I was just wondering where you got dumped." "Oh, all that stuff? Sorry, I got a shit memory. I got teleported to the landslide zone with 𝗬𝗪𝗧𝗏 and 𝗬𝗪𝗏𝗺. Dude's crazy powerful and kinda cute too." She winked at Ray before turning around. "Wish I could stick around and continue this riveting girl talk. But I gotta do some training by myself. Don't want everyone to see my little tricks." Kimmy gave Raelynn a wave before turning to her locker, pulling out her clothes. The pink-haired teen walked out of the locker room, leaving her friend to change. She soon walked out to the P grounds, the sight of her classmates going all out immediately greeting her. Some were paired up, trying to find breaches in each other's quirks. Others, probably not wanting to give away strategies like Kimmy, were off by themselves. "What do I want to try and work on? I honestly get a lot of my training from my grandmother, and I usually do it alone, so that doesn't seem too helpful. Maybe I could train with someone to up my speed." Ray pondered, looking around at her classmates, eyes landing on a certain red and white-haired male. With a light gulp and a flare of her nostrils, she made her way over to him. "Hey Candy Cane Kid, I was wondering if we could train together. Could you shoot like big icebergs at me and I dodge them? We both get to practice how fast our quirks can be and maybe improve their speed," Raelynn stated, a semi-confident smile on her face. Gray and cyan eyes stared down at her, confusion painted on Todoroki's usually expressionless face. "Candy cane? I'm not a Christmas-oriented candy, I'm Shoto Todoroki." He angled his head to the side, never breaking eye contact. Raylynn's body took a screenshot. "No, wait. That was an accident. Candy cane kinda just slipped out cause for the first couple days of school. I couldn't remember your name, like, at all. But not just your name, it was pretty much everyone. All the new names are still hard for me to pronounce and your hair looks like a candy cane or a peppermint. But peppermint seems a lot more of a name you'd give your boyfriend, and I have absolutely no intention of thaw." Todoroki lifted his hand, stopping her from continuing, lips pressed into a quivering line. It almost looked like he wanted to laugh. He took in a slow breath, regaining his emotionless composure. The spring air turned ice cold around them, swirls of snow and ice circling his right arm. "Let's get this done with then. Good luck. Tilde 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 tilde." Wump Raylynn's body fell against the grass, her skin already starting to itch from the feel of it. Her muscles screamed at her to stop, steam coming from her body. She let out a slew of coughs as she picked herself up, sweat dripping from her forehead. Her head whipped around to look at Lydia, the android's body currently set to attack mode. All part of Grandmother Vivian's training regimen. "Come on, Raelynn. We still have an hour of strictly quirk training. Afterward, We have gymnastics to increase your repertoire of moves, and finally hand-to-hand combat. What has you so tired? Lydia's voice was more robotic when she was like this, more cold and monotone. I already told you and my grandmother that we had training today. I worked with Todoroki for speed, and we kept going until we almost overloaded. She almost fell over again, her usual glow starting to die out. I came home with the dark cracks on my fingers and feet. I'm past my limit for the day. Shouldn't that be enough for at least a break? Apologies, Raelynn. Vivian's orders command that you complete each exercise every day. She says you are lucky that she is not doubling them until 2 days from today. Now, attack. Raelynn flared her nostrils, her mind starting to swirl. All I want is a stupid break. Is that too much to ask for one day? I'm so tired of being overworked like some kind of pathetic animal. I'm not pathetic. I'm not weak. As Raylynn's emotions fluctuated, her glow came back tenfold, almost pure white. A sharp crackling noise filled the air. Her arms began to tingle, a kind of static feeling coming over them. The navy blue cracks on her arms and bare feet darkened, spreading up the rest of her body. They began to pulse as voices entered her ears, screeching as loud as they could. Help us. It hurts so much. We're sorry. Just make it stop. You're a monster. God, make them stop. Raylynn's own cries joined the voices, gripping her head and falling to her knees. They dimmed out as all of Ray's energy suddenly evaporated out of her. The voices and crackling finally stopped, little white circles spotting her vision. A low groan wheezed out of her chest as she slowly picked herself up. She stared hard at her arms, clouded memories slowly becoming clearer the longer she looked. Raelynn, oh God, Ray, are you all right? Lydia had overridden her programmed battle mode, leaning down to help her back up. Get away from me. The smaller girl wildly smacked away Lydia's hand, scrambling to get away from her. Fear for the other woman in Raylynn's eyes. Oh no, Raelynn. Are the dreams back? The two stared at one another, a medley of confusion, hurt, and fear bubbling up around them. Raelynn cumbersomely got to her feet, taking a minute to steady herself. Keeping her eyes on the female android, she began to walk to the patio door. Lydia, please tell my grandmother I did what I could. I'm done for today. Lydia's concerned yells echoed in the back of her mind as she headed back inside, slowly going up the stairs in the foyer. It took a little longer than she would have liked, but Raelynn finally made it up to her room. She immediately shed her training attire, needing to cool off as soon as possible, growing wisps of steam still coming off of her. The thoughts of a cold shower made her smile, walking to her bathroom to make her little daydream a reality. As the water to her shower started, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Raelynn looked in confusion, her reflection not mirroring her disheveled and exhausted appearance. Mirror Raelynn looked clean and put together, energy and light simply dancing around her like it was nothing. Look at you. Pathetic. You want to be so strong like our grandmother. Like our deserving classmates. You know you only got into because of your lineage. If you weren't related to them, you'd be nothing. Literally. She let out a haughty laugh. You want to be strong, to stop being so frail. But wake up to reality already. Someone who's terrified of her own fucking quirk and doesn't even have a smidge of control over it will never be a hero. Ray's cheeks and nose began to heat up, her fingers flexing into fists before uncurling. I just have to keep training to get better. Get better? Her reflection scoffed. You're a damn liability in battle. You'll never be able to understand what's going on with you and your powers. Especially with your sudden eye upgrade. What if you're doing exercises one day, get a little too scared or emotional, and you snipe someone with your eyeballs? She gave a little playful gasp, malice in her eyes. The reflection started to morph, half of the perfect Raelynn look becoming into her grandmother's. Their gazes pierced into Raylynn's soul, her breathing becoming erratic. Or Tilda, what if your secret move happens? Ruin all of your friends' lives because you were too weak to keep your powers in check. You won't be any better than the villains you want to fight. Stop, please. Raylynn's voice cracked. Her left hand gave off a dim glow, ready to obliterate the girl and mirror before her. When she stared at her reflection, it was back to normal. The glow flickered out, the girl too exhausted to keep it up. Raelynn quickly tried to steady her breathing, but when she failed to, she scrambled into the medicine cabinet behind the mirror and took multiple huffs of her backup inhaler. When her lungs felt free once more, Ray swiped at her nose and swallowed the thick lump in her throat, turning to her shower. I'll show them, grandmother, and even my parents. This sports festival is my chance. Mom and Dad'll finally know that I was worth it. And them. They'll finally forgive me for what I did. The festival begins. Chapter text. The Class 1A waiting room was a buzz of nerves and excitement. Most of them talked about the hundreds of thousands of outcomes that could happen that day, while others tried to quell their fears with little mental tricks. Raelynn sat next to Kaminari and 𝗧𝗪𝗂𝐁, shooting the shit and talking about how they felt about the whole situation. Oh, yeah, Byeong-Ho, where you been? Ever since training for the festival started, you went radio silent on us. 𝗧𝗪𝗂𝐁 popped in, seemingly turning to face the girl. Yeah, you've been so quiet, I've actually started to miss your obnoxious rambling. Kaminari propped his foot on the table, tying his laces. Aw, how sweet of you, 𝗬𝗵𝗲. You should be grateful I talk to you as much as I do, buddy. No other girls do. Raelynn whispered the last part, sticking her tongue out at him. He dramatically grabbed his heart, as if she wounded him. Just stick a knife in me already. Geez, you've gotten a little ballsier. My old, sweeter Byeong-Ho wouldn't have said something so mean. Are you going through that same freak-out 𝐕𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 did when they first announced the festival? If you are, please leave me and my pride out of it. It's not mean if it's honest. And I'm sure your enormous pride will be fine, Kaminari. She ignored the last part, not knowing what he was even going on about. Anyways, yeah, I'm fine, but thank you for worrying about me. Not really used to that. She let the last part slide under her breath before perking up again, that usual wide smile on her face, stretched a little harder than her cheeks liked. I just wanted to put in a little more work, you know? Get up to everyone else's level. I think I even learned some new moves with my quirk. The door to the room slammed open. In the doorway stood Ida with a dejected-looking Kimmy not too far behind him. A collective gasp came from the class as they made their way inside the room. Whoa, what happened to you, Kim? Jiroo piped up, speaking for practically everyone. Kimmy was wearing her sports uniform like everyone else, but her right pants leg was rolled up to make room for the white and baby blue cast covering the lower half of her leg. Under her arms were metallic crutches keeping her up. She gave her classmates a tired smile, hobbling over to Takoyami and Shoji's table. The multi-armed teen pulled out a chair and helped to sit her down. With a pained hiss, she lifted her leg onto a vacant chair, leaning back with a labored sigh. Since we got little time, I'll make this short. I was practicing a new move, and when it worked for once, I came down real hard on my foot. Then, like the graceful ballerina I am, she rolled her eyes. I took a tumble, jacking it up more. Luckily, there were some people around that helped me and took me to the hospital. They said I have a week or two in this thing. She groaned, holding her head in her hands. I can't believe I have to miss this. I told my parents to look for me going for first place. Now I can't even go anywhere. Shoji placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, gently rubbing it while muttering some words to her. The girls of the class immediately got up, trying to comfort her. There was a flash of sparkle as pens came out of Yaoyorozu's hand, passing them around. We hope this makes you feel a little bit better. The raven-haired girl smiled. And look on the bright side, Kimmy, Yororoka chimed in. You still have 2 more years to show off in the sports festivals. We all know you're going to kick ass in them. You'll be running circles around us. Mina cheered, already signing the cast. Cheer up, Kim. It'll all work out. Raelynn smiled, uncapping her pen. The silver and black-haired girl looked at all of them, tears welling up in her paled-out eyes. Thanks, guys. I don't even know what to say. One of you girls better win this shit for me and yourself. She gave a little sniffle, rubbing her bloodshot eyes with her sleeves. The girls of Class 1A gave her a determined nod. An extra motivation lit inside of them. As they continued to sign the cast, they barely even noticed Todoroki's declaration of war to Midoriya until the tension set in. The entire room went awkwardly quiet. No one dared to make a sound lest it be the powder keg between the two males. Time to get going, kiddos. President Mike's voice boomed through the speakers. It's time to make your debut in the sports festival. All first-year classes A through K make your way to the stadium. Tilde 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 tilde. And so it started, each class making their debut to the world as President Mike announced each one of them. The crowd screamed and cheered, but every student could feel the unspoken pressure of expectancy from them, especially those in Class 1A. The staggering sense of having some image to live up to weighed on them, slowly killing the giddy and almost childlike excitement vibe, and replaced it with nothing but pure determination. Before we can let the fun begin, it's time for our student pledge to be given by Katsuki Bakugo, Midnight announced. Are we sure he should give the pledge? He's not exactly the next Shakespeare when it comes to talking. Raelynn watched as the blonde pushed past everyone on his way to the stage. as if she had much room to talk. "Well, Blasty Boy did come in first in the entrance exam," 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 commented, traces of uncertainty in his face. The microphone on the little stage gave a short screech of feedback as Bakugo approached it. Then silence. "All I want to say is that I'm gonna win." The rest of the classes lost their minds, oceans of insults coming from them as the souls from Class 1A left their bodies. As Bakugo came down from the stand, most of his classmates complained, asking why he further cemented the targets on their backs. All he did was shrug, giving them a thumbs down. "I don't give a flying fink rat's ass when it comes to what happens to you idiots, even if you're in my class. It's not my fault that everyone here is just a stepping stone to my inevitable victory." He frowned and turned his attention back to Midnight. Raelynn let out a sigh, her eyes lingering on him. For once, the cocky air around him was gone. She hadn't really noticed it as much ever since the battle trial. Sure, it was definitely still there, and it infected everything he did, but it wasn't as overbearing as the first day of school. A soft grin stretched over features as she looked away. He could act as casual as he wanted and talk all big, but Raelynn could tell that Bakugo was taking this to heart just like everyone else. It was a matter of respect, and she wanted to live up to and exceed those expectations. Ray hadn't forgotten the promise she had made to herself after the quirk test. She was going to be better than this guy. Time to get these games started. A holographic screen popped up behind the stage Midnight was standing on. "Let's see what the first game of the sports festival is. Hope you're ready to suffer." The randomizer on the screen went off, abruptly picking a game. "It's the obstacle course, and as long as you don't leave the course, you can do anything your little hearts desire." It took no time for all the classes to stand ready at the starting area. Raelynn stared out at the heads in front of her, a bead of sweat already trickling down her forehead. She unbuttoned the top buttons on her uniform shirt as she absorbed as much energy her body could from the sun's rays. As the timer for the race counted down, the girl began to worry. "I have to be careful with energy dispensing. If there's a section that's in total darkness, I'll only have 3 short uses before I need to absorb more light. And then there's what Midnight said. We can do anything we want in bounds. I have to stay in control, can't go overboard. No more random, I laser move thingies. Begin." Hundreds of students rushed to the doorway, the number of them quickly clogging it up. Raelynn found herself almost drowning in the sea of people, getting pushed and shoved every which way. Suddenly, the air grew winter cold, ice particles rushing towards the students. The girl quickly shot up and above the crowd, as a blast of Todoroki's ice appeared throughout the doorway. Her sneakers had been burned off, but at least she wasn't trapped in ice like almost everyone else. But what comes up must come down, and Raelynn soon came down on a pair of shoulders, earning an agitated groan from the person below. "Oops, sorry," she shouted, immediately regaining her balance. Raelynn looked out ahead, seeing how far the exit was, a groan of her own heaving out of her chest. "I am super duper sorry in advance to whoever's shoulders I step on." Without wasting any more time, Raelynn started shoulder hopping. Once she reached the end of people, she jumped off the last pair of shoulders and activated her quirk in her feet again, letting the energy propel her forward. Ray spotted a flash of Todoroki's red and white hair below her, easily recognizing her previous training partner. She let out a mischievous giggle as she flew forward, her hands lighting up. She pulled an arm back to aim and energy blast at him, but quickly pulled back when giant robots entered the obstacle course. "It's the 0-pointers from the entrance exam. How are the students going to get past this one?" Present Mike narrated. Clasping her hands together, the glow from her quirk quickly coated her entire body. As it burned brighter, her body moved faster, dropping down from the sky and running forward before shooting back up and through the chest of one of the gigantic robots. There was grease and melted metal on her face when she dropped down on the other side, Ray's uniform sporting some trendy holes and tears. With a confident smile, she started running, her pink ponytail whipping behind her, while a rush of ice appeared behind her. And with that living laser move, Raelynn Byeong-Ho from Class 1A takes the lead. I mean, what could you expect from the daughter of pro hero Supernova? Only that kind of caliber of a person can get in on a recommendation. Part of Raelynn inwardly cringed at Present Mike's words. Well, guess that cat's out of the bag. Again. She kept sprinting, skidding to a stop at some sort of chasm. She eyed the ropes connecting rocky platform to platform, memories of her childhood gymnastics classes coming over her. Getting in a ready stance, She cartwheeled across the first line of rope in a matter of seconds before launching herself off the rocky platform, amber light trailing behind her. Who knew little top circus camp would come in handy? Thanks, Grand. Icy hot, Flamingo. You won't beat me. The explosions behind her grew louder, Bakugo flying after her. Enjoy the lead for now, Byeong-Ho. You're not going to have it for long. Todoroki yelled from not too far behind. She turned her head to give them some very sportsmanship-like quip, but let out a squeal instead, dropping down and tumbling a few feet in front of the last obstacle, the minefield. Raelynn grabbed her head and panted. With everything going on, she didn't even realize she was reaching the end of the energy she had absorbed, the amber glow around her body gone. A blur of red and white sprinted past her as the explosions that were once behind her moved ahead of her. And just like that, the lead goes back to Shoto Todoroki with Katsuki. Bakugo not too far on his heels. Raelynn scrambled to her feet and entered the minefield, navigating her way to Bakugo and Todoroki, while her body slowly took in more of the sun's rays. There was a sudden explosion behind them, a bright light of pink and purple appearing at the start of the minefield. And in a matter of seconds, Izuku Midoriya has stolen the lead. The twists and turns just don't end. And this is only the first event? Eraserhead. What kind of drugs are your class on? Do not accuse my class of using drugs, present Mike. After the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 incident, they just know how to act without hesitation. When they see an opportunity to achieve their goal, they let their drive take over to get them there. Adding that in with their own knowledge is why you see them ahead of everyone else. The man muffled through the bandages wrapped around his face. There was another sudden boom from up ahead, more mines going off. Raylynn's body began to glow again, taking a leap and rushing forward, her body taking on the shape of a living laser once more to push her through the field. The finish line was so close, she could practically hear the crowd's cheers. A strange flurry of cold wind and hot air prickled her skin as she flew forward. But it didn't matter, a wave of bright light and noise drowning everything out. And following a hair length behind Izuku Midoriya is Raelynn Byeong-Ho, taking second place. Present Mike screamed joyously as the crowd roared after him. The girl wiped her brow and took a moment to catch her breath before looking up into the crowd. Her chest welled up with an immense pride, a giddy smile pulling at her lips. She pumped a fist into the air, laughing as the realization of what she had accomplished hit her. I'm doing it, guys. She lowered her arm, holding her hand against her chest. Blurred faces of two adults came to the forefront of her mind. Faces she had only seen in the hidden away family albums. You'll finally be able to see what I can do. See that your daughter can actually do things. I hope you're watching. Mom. Dad. The Calvary Battle chapter text. Raelynn found a spot against one of the stadium's walls, starting to come down from her adrenaline high. She watched as others crossed the finish line, clapping for those she recognized. Beads of sweat trickled down her forehead as her body began to overheat and tire out, the physical backlash of her quirk finally hitting her. Geez, I really overdid it using that living laser move twice. Maybe they'll have some cold water around for the participa. Hey, Flamingo. There's a what? Bakugo's voice jolted Raelynn out of her thoughts, turning her head to catch him stomping over to her. He practically looked like something out of a cartoon. His face blood, boiling red, eyes devilishly narrow, and Raelynn could swear on Kaminari's silly bands she saw smoke spouting out of his ears. Hey Bakugo. This is new. Usually it's me coming up to you, not the other way around. She awkwardly chuckled, desperately trying not to get her body blown to pieces. But, oh, congrats on 4th place. I saw you flying around with your explosions, which by the way are super cool. And it's kinda like what I do with my energy and my feet. It's like we both do this fancy fallen thing and… Who the hell do you think you are? He soon cut her off. She took a second to actually think. Raelynn Byeong, don't be a smartass. Where does all your stupid power come from? There's no way an extra like you fucking beat me and got second. Bakugo seethed. Bakugo moved in closer to her. Her back soon pressed flat against the wall. Raelynn felt her cheeks start to burn. There was an intense smell of caramel flooding her senses, the sweet smell making her slightly lightheaded. It was unexpected but nice. Why does he have to be so close? I've never been this physically close to anyone other than family. Wait a minute, was I the flamingo he was talking about? Why am I the flamingo that's so oh my god, he's still staring at me? Why can he be so intimidating? I wish we could just get along, like those rivals in cartoons and TV shows. Those relationships look a lot healthier. But don't they usually end up getting together in the end? Holy fuck, he is close and really sweaty, it's kinda gross. Ray tried to focus her mind and calm her increasingly bright red cheeks, lest she get yelled at again, thinking on his questions. She honestly had no idea what he was asking about. It was just her quirk she was seemingly blessed and cursed with. Avoiding eye contact, she looked down to her hands, weaving her fingers together. It was getting way too hot than what she was used to. I don't know what you're talking about, 𝗵𝘃𝗁. I really don't. I'm only somewhat strong or powerful cause my grandmother trained me. 𝗵𝘃𝗁's rough hand came down on her arm, the other gripping her jaw, jerking her head upwards to look at him. Scarlet eyes met emerald ones, sparks of tension flying. A myriad of intense emotions fought around in 𝗵𝘃𝗁's eyes as Raelynn stared like a deer caught in headlights. His teeth were bared, face slowly contorting into an annoyed snarl. You're starting to sound like those brainless dimwits you hang around all the time. Listen, Flamingo, I don't give a single damn what kind of family you come from, even if dear old granny or whatever was a pro. I've been up against you. From the start. It's not just stupid Deku and that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 idiot. Stop hiding behind your family to be strong. You look like a scared shitless baby. If you ever go against me, either bring all your raw power or quit now and stop wasting everyone's time and effort. I will not have a waste of space as my rival. He let go of her and took a few steps back, eyes still locked onto hers. And next time, don't talk down to me like I don't deserve your respect, sunshine. It's fucking obnoxious. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 turned his back to her, not bothering to wait for a reaction. His eyebrows knitted together as he replayed the mostly one-sided conversation. Another pang of anger coming over him as he realized he'd called her sunshine. He was still trying to figure out why he had thought about the nickname after the 𝗧𝗏 attack, but no reason could to mind yet. Sure, he used those kinds of nicknames when addressing people because remembering the names of extras was a waste of his time. But he didn't like the stir in his mind when he thought of that nickname, especially for Raelynn. The blonde swore to himself to never even think of it again. But only a few weeks later, and here he was. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 grit his teeth and inwardly cursed himself. What is up with that stupid nickname and that girl? It's so dumb. Sure, she's got some power and our quirks are similar. But that's it. Just a knockoff. Just a rival for me to beat into the ground, just like everyone else. Once I do, I'll get over this. She's not going to stop me from being the unquestionable winner. A devilish smirk came over his face, his aggressive determination flaring up again. Raelynn watched him go off, her face pinker than freshly spun cotton candy. She could hear her heart and blood rushing in her ears, practically having a whole adrenaline rush again. All physical effects of her quirk completely forgotten. Those words were the last thing she expected from 𝗵𝘃𝗁 of all people. But deep down, she knew they were something she desperately needed to hear. Finally, there was someone who saw Raelynn for herself, not her legacy. But there was something else that was making her heart skip a beat, the amber around her body growing slightly brighter. Sunshine? Tilde 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 tilde. The next event had been drawn. The cavalry battle. Midnight had just set off the timer for everyone to organize their teams, students running off to create their groups. By placing second in TH obstacle course, and now worth 205 points, Raelynn was popular off the bat, a handful of people coming up to her. Byeong-Ho, remember me? A short, forest green-haired girl stepped up to her. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from the recommendation exam. How about you join our team? 𝗬𝗪𝗧𝗏 bounded over. Come on, Raelynn. With you on our team, we'll be unstoppable. Shoji simply gave her a questioning look, slowly offering one of his hands to her. Raelynn raised her hands up in front of her chest, as if to defend herself. All of it was overwhelming, to say the least. She opened her mouth to try and answer, but was soon stopped as she felt someone come up behind her side. Raelynn bent her head backwards, shocked to see Todoroki there. Part of her was happily surprised, while the other felt almost disappointed. She was hoping, a small part of her even wishing, that a certain blonde would be vying for her on their team. Byeong-Ho, I've seen and experienced what kind of fighter you are. So, I'd like for you to join my team. I guarantee we'll win this whole thing. Todoroki spoke monotonously to her. Raelynn brought her head down, a wide grin evident on her face. Turning to face him, she clamped her hand on his shoulder, her answer clear on her face. Who wouldn't want to team up with one of the top students of the class? Hell yeah, Candy-ka, Todoroki. Sorry, I swear I'll remember your name. And just 'cause we work together now, doesn't mean I won't treat you like my mortal enemy if I have to later on. She declared, staring up into his stoic face with a small smile. Todoroki gave her a curt nod, turning around to walk over to an expectant Ieyasu and Ida. Come on then. We don't have that much time left to strategize. The girl bounced along after him and huddled up with her temporary teammates. The discussion was straight to the point, Todoroki giving out roles to each member. Momo made quick work in making 2 pairs of roller skates for her and Raelynn to keep up with Ida's speed. A couple bandages followed soon after, all of them agreeing that they'd be able to keep their rider sturdy on their arms with all the constant motion. After wrapping the new bandages over her older ones, a siren went off, alerting everyone it was time to begin the battle. Teams quickly set themselves up, each designated rider climbing on top of their team formations. As Todoroki set himself up, he started to go over the plan one last time. Remember, we're mainly going to be playing defense anytime. We aren't going after Midoriya's headband. Ida, you're obviously our speed. Byeong-Ho, you're playing as our main offense, especially with that new move you shared. And Ieyasu, your main defense to keep us from toppling over and watching any weak spots. I'm sure I can trust you all to fulfill your roles. Ready? Midnight shouted. We're counting on your abilities too, Todoroki. Ida nodded. Set. Ieyasu narrowed her eyes. We understand. We won't let you down. Go, Raelynn grinned. Let's give him hell. Tilde 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 tilde. And hell it was. From the very start when the buzzer went off, it was a feeding frenzy. Though most of the teams went straight for Midoriya, there were a few brave ones that came after Todoroki's team. The small group easily avoided them, Todoroki bringing up walls of ice to protect their front and right side, while Ieyasu skillfully handled their left. Ida and Raelynn simply did their best to keep up with everyone's movements and keep them stable as they pushed onward. Teams came and went as the time ticked down, almost nearing the halfway mark. Todoroki. We are starting to cut this a little close, don't you think? Ieyasu panted worriedly, eyes darting around for anyone around them. Todoroki kept his eyes locked ahead, the determination in his heterochromic eyes flaring up again. It'll be all right. Keep pushing ahead and ready yourselves, his team is up ahead. Rushing past others and putting themselves in front, Todoroki's team was soon face to face with Midoriya's. The mysterious anger Todoroki was harboring for Midoriya could be felt from everyone, both teams coming to an awkward standstill until other teams saw the opportunity, stampeding in from all sides. As Midoriya readied his team to run away again, Todoroki sprung back to life. Ida, rush them. Byeong-Ho, it's time. On it. With a giddy smile, Rei's body started to glow brighter, while her teammates closed their eyes. She waited a few moments for the teams to grow closer before she went off. Thanks for the inspiration, Kaminari. Flashbang. The area around them was bathed in blinding flashes of white firelight for a few moments, like multiple flashbangs going off at once, before returning to normal. Open your eyes, guys. I think that took care of them. There were loud groans as the teams who got blinded tried to readjust their eyesight, but to no quick avail. A rush of ice surrounded their feet, freezing them in place so Todoroki could snatch a few more headbands in the process. With a circular wall of ice and continuous pressing, Todoroki's team finally pushed Midoriya's into a corner, but created another standstill of uncertainty. Suddenly, Ida looked up to Todoroki and gave him a knowing look, only uttering the words, "Hold on and get the headband at all costs." There was a sudden rush of wind and heat, Todoroki's cavalry horse team moving forward at insane speeds before jerking to the side and coming to a halt. As the dust and smoke started to settle, there was a roar of cheers, covering the sound of Raelynn's dry, barking coughs. Shit. The coughs, they're getting so much worse. Due to some kind of special move from Tenya Ida, Todoroki's team has taken the top with the 10 million points. Present, Mike screeched. It didn't take long for Midoriya's team to come back with a counter. As the enemy came forward, Raelynn could feel the presence change, a different level of power coming after them. The air heated up and flames danced around Todoroki's arm before being swept away. In a panic, Raelynn removed her right hand from the horse formation, her hand lighting up to let out an energy blast. As the area grew brighter, the dark mass of dark shadow shrunk away from the light, before the team dashed away, having grabbed a headband. Before Raelynn could even process what had happened, there was a wail of despair from Midoriya. Ieyasu shook her head. You really didn't think we would leave the most important headband on top, did you? Time for a countdown, kiddos, Present Mike announced. With desperation in their eyes, Midoriya's team came after them again. We have to get that headband, Takoyami, Midoriya shouted to the bird-headed team. Dark shadow flew towards them, beak outstretched. Raelynn, 𝗬𝗪𝗢𝗏 screamed. Using her already charged arm, Raelynn braced herself as she let another energy blast go, knocking Dark Shadow back to its owner. Get ready for 𝗬𝗪𝗢𝗏's words were cut off by the sound of deafening explosions and the breaking of ice as a wild Bakugo came hurtling in. Got him, Net, the blonde screamed, forcefully changing trajectory to aim for 𝗬𝗪𝗢𝗏's team. As everyone reached for them, the buzzer went off. Time's up. Time to check the results, and then we're off for lunch and a commercial break. Present Mike Shri. In first place is Team 𝗬𝗪𝗢𝗏. Second, Team Bakugo. Third, Team Shinzo. Huh, what a surprise. And in fourth, Team Midoriya. See you guys after these special messages. The first match chapter text. Denki Kaminari. The blonde trembled, shakily turning his head over to the source of the enraged screaming. Death glaring at him was one of the girls he and 𝗵𝗃𝗏 tricked. Raelynn. Your ass is going to feel the heat of 1,000 suns. And 𝗵𝗃𝗏, you're gonna wish you were already dead. Raelynn screamed in fluent Korean as she chucked her pom-poms at the boys' heads. And we're back from lunch. But, it seems like Class 1 wants to provide some fan service with some impromptu cheerleading uniforms. Present Mike coughed. He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly and covered the microphone to turn to Aizawa. Remind me to fail Kaminari and 𝗵𝗃𝗏 on their next papers. Mina threw her pom-poms too. I have no idea what my girl Byeong-Ho said, but it sounded murderous, so I'm in. Normally, Raelynn would have been fine with wearing the outfits. Her quirk naturally heated up her body and kept it hot, so cool clothes were a must. But to trick the rest of the girls to wear something they weren't comfortable with called for someone to get burned. As Raylynn's hands lit up, 𝗬𝗪𝗓 pulled down on her shoulders. Come on, it's not that bad. You gotta admit these uniforms are cute. We'll be just like those cheerleading teams in junior high. Why, yeah. Listen to 𝗬𝗪𝗓. P, please. Kaminari chuckled nervously, shaking as he held 𝗵𝗃𝗏 up as a human shield. The amber aura around the pink-haired girl immediately went out, a dull pang in her chest starting to throb. She couldn't move past the words, junior high. Quickly shoving the feelings down and ruffling her bangs, she brought back her usual beaming smile. But she couldn't just let the two idiots without a lesson. Now could she? Watch your backs, you two. I'll get my revenge wherever and whenever. She pointed at the class pervs. With a mischievous smirk, she switched back to Korean. I'm watching you idiots. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 racked his head, hands clutching at his temples. If you're gonna threaten to kill us, at least do it in English so people will know it's you, he wailed. The girls laughed, starting to ease up. With more convincing from 𝗬𝗪𝗓, they decided to come up with a little routine to show off during the festival's mini-games. Soon enough, Present Mike announced the last event, the one-on-one tournament. The lots were drawn. The bracket was set. And so the mini-games could start with a bang. The girls of Class 1 eagerly got together, ready to have a little fun and take their minds off their bundling nerves. In a giggly group huddle, they went over the plan before breaking away. Plus ultra, they cheered, the stadium looking to them. Raelynn took a running start, leaping over the rest of the girls as they kept cheering. She pulled out a few flips before landing with a split. Ray threw her arm into the air and pointed her pom-pom-covered hand to the girls, all of them messing around with jumps and little cheers. Mina rushed forward and vaulted over Ray's shoulder, tumbling into a finishing pose, all of them bringing up a peace sign. Naturally, the crowd went feral, the girls sheepishly waving. The American cheerleaders started coming in, trying to redirect the attention to them. Yaoyorozu tossed her pom-poms away, a small smile on her face. Well, that was quite fun, to be honest. Yeah, that was awesome. Definitely got me all pumped up for the rest of the day. Uraraka waved her fist up and down. Raelynn was absolutely beaming, bounding along with them. That was freaking awesome. The cheers, the movement. It was completely ecstatic. Like a fireworks show or something. And Ashido, she took a ragged breath. Ashido. Why didn't you tell me you could move like that? Your tumbling was like something like out of my gymnastics class. Have you ever taken any classes? It would have been so cool if we went to the same studio, even though we totally couldn't have since I did all my stuff at home. The pink-skinned teen slung her arm over Raylynn's shoulders. All dance lessons, sis. Suddenly Mina gasped, turning Ray to face her. With your immaculate gymnastics and my badass dancing, we could do like little events and stuff or make a whole cheerleading squad for you. Eh? Just something fun, you know? The two smiled at one another as they let out a squeal, the other girls hyping them up. Ray went to say something, but a painful scratchy feeling in her throat and lungs closed her mouth. She took a second to breathe and clear her throat, forcing her smile to get wider. For once, she took a minute to think, and her thoughts immediately went to her home life. I gotta think about it. My grandmother is strict about that kind of stuff, and usually doesn't allow me to go out or take time away from my training. But I'll try my best to try and convince her, Ray declared, walking to the locker rooms to get changed. As the girls dashed down the hall, bubbly and chatty as ever, a certain blonde watched them go. Bakugo's eyes narrowed into frustrated slits. He shoved his hands into his pockets and shook his head, grumbling to himself about what he saw. Fed up with it, he turned around and gremlin strutted away, eventually finding a wall to press his head against. He easily got lost in thought, the gears trying to turn. I understand every stupid idiot here, but I can't get a good grasp on her. What is up with that stupid flamingo girl? Tilde 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 tilde. With the end of the intermission festivities came the fights everyone was eagerly anticipating. Though it didn't exactly start off with much of a bang, it was easy to tell that each competitor was aiming for the top. Raelynn was having the time of her life, applauding and jumping out of her seat to cheer on her classmates, despite some objections. Byong-Ho, chill out for a second. You're gonna wear yourself out before your first fight. Kaminari tiredly groaned, suddenly getting up to steady Raelynn as she started to fall back. And probably crush someone, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, in the process. She stopped herself mid-cheer, a huge sheepish grin on her face. The two plopped themselves back in their seats, Raelynn swinging her legs to rest on Kaminari's lap. All right, if you want me to rest so bad, I'll use you as my leg rest. And even though I should still be pissed at you, please just call me Raelynn or Ray. I know it's about respect, but I feel close enough with you, and calling me Byong-Ho all the time sounds like too much work. She forced a laugh, her eyes flitting up and down between her fingers and the unexpected fight of Ibara Shiozaki versus Momo Yaoyorozu. Raelynn always did hate lying, an uncomfortable lump forming in her stomach. A goofy grin came over Kaminari's face, swinging an arm around Ray's shoulders. Hey, as long as you won't be angry at me anymore, I'll do anything you say. Seeing you lit up and screaming Korean like that was fucking terrifying. The two laughed and turned back to the fight, just in time to catch Momo Yaoyorozu getting entangled by multiple vines, disappointment clearly written all over her face as Midnight raised a cuffed arm. Yaoyorozu has been restrained. Shiozaki wins. Raelynn quickly untangled herself from her blonde friend, hurriedly explaining how she wanted to get in some warm-ups before her fight with Tokoyami. As she bounded her way through the hallways, the sounds of upbeat music played from her pocket, her phone ringtone going off. Pulling it out and checking the number, a confused frown came over her face. The number wasn't a Japanese one. Shrugging it off as strange, Raelynn simply declined it and kept skipping to one of the many training rooms. The fights before Raylynn's were fairly quick, and before she knew it, her name was being announced as she took those nervous steps up onto the arena platform. Across from her stood the dark fighter himself, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He stood with his arms crossed over his chest and his beak pressed into a thin line, pomegranate eyes looking over his opponent. Raelynn stared back as she rocked back and forth on her feet, taking deep breaths to calm herself down. She didn't want to burn out on excitement before the fight even got started. Don't lose control. For our next match, we have a pink ball of sunny energy admitted into the hero course on recommendations. Raelynn Byeong-Ho vs. the dark and talented samurai with his even darker shadow. Also in the hero course, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 Tokoyami. Present Mike happily announced. Ready, challengers? On my mark. Begin. Midnight shouted. At those words, dark shadow rushed out of Tokoyami's abdomen, his claws outstretched. Raylynn's body was coated in that amber glow, rapidly growing brighter, letting loose the same flashbang move she used in the cavalry battle. A low grunt came from Tokoyami while Dark Shadow yelped in pain, shrinking away from the light immediately. A proud squeal came from Raelynn, taking in more light from the sun's rays. As the effects of the sudden light wore off for Tokoyami and his shadow, they barely had enough time to react as Raelynn came barreling at them from above, right fist raised to land a punch. Dark Shadow on it. The purple mask shielded his face, Ray's punch hitting Dark Shadow instead of his user. Raelynn jumped back, putting some space in between her and Tokoyami, the glow around her body taking focus into just her hands. Pushing her arms forward, a barrage of energy blasts rocketed towards Tokoyami. More pained yelps came from Dark Shadow as he took every blast, shrinking away more and more. Beads of sweat trailed down Raelynn's forehead, taking in more light to keep the blasts going. I surrender. Takoyami groaned. Raelynn ceased her fire, looking over to the state of Takoyami. He was all right, but Dark Shadow was reduced to practically nothing, hiding behind Takoyami's shoulder as light wisps of smoke danced around him. Ray blinked in confusion, before she slowly came to realize his weakness. Dark Shadow can't take a lot of light. That's why he shrank away from me so much during the cavalry battle and this match. Kinda bad matchup for him. How didn't I see that before? I feel bad. The match felt so short. Does he feel bad? He's gotta feel bad. Maybe I can give him some candy to make it up to him. I hope he likes Ken. Her thoughts were soon interrupted by Takoyami's hand being outstretched to her. He gave her a respectful nod, emotions unclear on his stoic face. Congratulations. This fight was stacked against me from the beginning. Thank you for not holding back, and I hope you can carry on strong into the next rounds. The corners of Raelynn's mouth curled up into a smile, gently taking Takoyami's hand. All she did was nod, still planning to apologize later with those sweets. After one last bow of respect, the two headed off, one back to the stands and the other off to the break rooms. As Raelynn's footsteps echoed in the hallway, another set could be heard, but at a quickened speed, almost like they were running. Ray quickly swiveled around in attempts to see who else was around, but no one else was in the hallway. The second pair of footsteps finally halted, a new sound taking its place. Soft mutters and whispers made the pink-haired girl swivel back around to face forward, noticing a shadow of a figure dip behind a corner in the hallway. Her feet slowly urged her on, curiosity easily getting the better of her common sense. But as she grew closer, the voices became more hushed, only able to make out a few muddled words. Got it. No. Saw. Don't rush. Won't suspect. Quick. And done. Trust me. There was a crunch and a soft laugh before the darkened corner went silent. Raelynn quickly popped around the corner, a chilling cool breeze prickling goosebumps over her skin. Whoever was there was completely gone, the only evidence of them being the remains of what seemed to be a destroyed phone. It's kinda old looking. Almost looks like one of those burner ones in the crime shows Grandpa likes to watch. Whoever that was probably wasn't talking to anyone good. Raelynn furrowed her eyebrows as she picked up the pieces. The young girl had to get this to a hero as fast as she could. If this really was a burner phone, something or someone at UA wasn't what they seemed to be. Ashido and Byung-Ho. Chapter text. Whoa. Mina front flipped over an energy blast. I know my girl was good, but that was a little too close. The pink girl flung her hands forward, tossing balls of acid. Raelynn let out a squeak as she narrowly swung and swiveled her body to dodge the attack. Pink strands of hair flew out of her neat ponytail, sweat flying off her forehead and letting out a few coughs. The fight of Mina Ashido versus Raelynn Byeong-Ho had been going on for the last 6 minutes, the agile females dancing circles around each other. But both were deadly determined. How much longer you want to drag this out, Ashido? Ray shot off more energy from her fists aimed at Mina's limbs, the blasts slower and dimmer than before. The horned teen chuckled before letting out a yelp at getting hit with a blast. As long as it takes for you to go over your limit, Byung-Ho. She's right. I'm getting close to going over, she can tell. I have to try something new. Ranged attacks aren't working, and if I'm too slow and get too close, I'm done for. Gotta take her down before she can even blink. Don't lose control, don't lose control. The glow emanating from her hands quickly spread over her body before centering in her bare feet. With a giddy smile, Raelynn took off sprinting to her opponent. Mina chucked more acid her way, Raelynn pushing through the barrage and shooting herself up into the sky through the energy in her feet. Her body disappeared from Mina's sight, head swiveling around in confusion. A small dark shadow quickly grew bigger as Raelynn came flying down at Mina, tackling her down to the ground. A loud wheeze of air came from Ashido, the wind completely knocked out of her lungs as Ray continued to sit on her and force her hands together. Be honest, Ashido, can you move out of this hold? Midnight looked at them. Mina tried to wiggle out, but Raylynn's hold stayed strong. Nope, this bomb won't get off of me, and I don't think I have the energy or acid left to get out. Ashido has been incapacitated. Byung-Ho is the winner and moves on to the next round. As the two pink-haired teens brushed themselves off and bowed, they walked back to their classmates together. The two walked in quiet, unsure of how to break the ice. Sneaking glances at one another, both opened their mouth. So, they both started, immediately stopping. The girls let out a chuckle and shook their heads. We're friends, right, Ashido? Raelynn started, voice soft. Mina's face looked perplexed. Of course we are. Even though we don't hang out as much as I'd like. We've kinda clicked since day one, so you're stuck with me, 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏. The two laughed again, tensions easing, the atmosphere lightening. Stifling a cough and taking a breath, Raelynn flashed a smile. I just wanted to make sure. I'm not really used to it all yet. She shook her head, taking out her ponytail. Anyway, I wanted to ask, why are you aiming to be a hero? I knew everyone was determined, but you started to scare me back there. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 massaged her cheeks, too busy thinking about the question to laugh at the little joke. I want to give people strength and hope. If I can prove I can be a hero, then I can encourage others to do the same and realize their bravery. Everyone can be a hero, even if it seems like their actions are small for now. Raylynn's face softened as she watched Mina talk about her drive, seeing her golden eyes glow and shine. It was so admirable. What about you, Byeong-Ho? 𝗧𝗵𝗲? What's pushing you so hard? Raylynn's fingers immediately went into a fidgeting tizzy, her green eyes flitting up and down between her hands and the hallway straight ahead. I hate people who use their oh-so-great quirks to hurt others, like villains. I want justice for those being picked on and be a voice for those who can't speak up. Her stomach churned uncomfortably. Raelynn really hated lying. Mina giggled and sighed, linking her arm with Raylynn's. Always thinking of others and being a sweetie. Come on, Byeong-Ho, let's relax and watch more matches. Actually, I have to dash over to Mr. Aizawa really quick. Save me my seat and my leg rest, 𝗵𝗃𝗏. The two let out another quick laugh, going down their separate paths. Raelynn quickly turned back to look at the pink girl, calling out one last time. Oh, and 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏, please call me Ray. And call me Mina. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 lockers they were given for the festival. It did take some time to navigate the halls to the announcer booth, but luckily enough, they were on an extended commercial break. The teachers were confused at the girl's unexpected appearance, but nonetheless took the time to listen to her. Through multiple repeats of Raelynn's overexcited, speedy, and rambled narration, they finally got a good idea of what was going on, and it made them sick to their stomachs. "Thanks for handing this over, kid. This'll definitely come in handy after that attack on the 𝗧𝐭𝐲." Present Mike unwrapped the napkin, gently poking through the phone pieces. "But you said this all happened a few minutes after your fight with Tokoyami, correct?" Aizawa's eyes lazily looked from the phone back to Raelynn, voice muffled by bandages. The girl vigorously nodded her head. She kept her mouth sealed shut, nervous goosebumps crawling up her skin. Even though this was her homeroom teacher, someone she could trust, Ray felt uneasy and slightly scared nonetheless, simply due to his authority. She had learned that lesson years ago. The black-haired teacher gave a low groan. "Then anyone here today could have used this phone. We went to commercial break after that round of fights, so it doesn't exactly narrow down our list of suspects." But Present Mike quickly came in, giving a reassuring smile to Raelynn. "It could just be nothing in the end. Or it answers a few speculations some of us teachers had. We'll figure this out faster than 𝗵𝗃𝗧 finishing a batch of cookies." He let out a boisterous laugh, adjusting his sunglasses as he did. An amused snort came from Raelynn before her face changed back to a nervous neutral. The two looked to her, giving her a grateful nod. "Head back to the stands, the fights will be starting up again soon. You'll be facing either Katsuki Bakugo or Ijiro Kirishima next, so I suggest being as rested as possible and being at your best." Aizawa slumped back into his seat, turning around to face the arena. "If it's Bakugo, take that bully down a peg." Present Mike lightly punched her shoulder, goofy smile over his features. He too went back to his chair, gearing up to start yelling. With serving her purpose, Raelynn bounded out of the booth and headed back to the Class 1 stands. She let out a shaky breath once out of their presence. Her mind was racing, completely bewildered at the situation. The teachers were trying to make it seem like it wasn't a big deal or anything, but they know there's some kind of traitor or something here. She tried to push the thought and endless possibilities of suspects out of her mind, all of it making her brain pound. "We were chosen to be at UA. To be heroes, everyone has to be trustworthy. There can't be a traitor," she whispered to herself, now standing at the top of the stairs in the 1A stands. Taking her seat with Mina and Denki, Raelynn put on her ready smile, joking around with them. The festivities carried on, Present Mike bringing them back from commercials and announcing the fight between Kirishima and Bakugo. Like she did in previous rounds, she paid as much attention as her mind would allow to whoever would be her next match before suddenly changing focus to something new. Even though she was rooting for both sides to win, Raelynn was slightly holding out for 𝗵𝘃𝗁 to be the one she'd go up against. Raelynn wanted to prove 𝗧𝗵𝗲 wrong from the quirk test. Prove she was just as or even more powerful than he is. To one of them, the other was seemingly just a rival to surpass. The other, sure, they saw it the same way, but they wanted to understand the other. And it didn't help that Raelynn hadn't forgotten about that nickname he'd randomly given her. Sunshine. I know people are complicated, but geez, this guy is a confusing mess. Kirishima has been knocked out. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 is the winner and will move on, closing this bracket. Midnight declared. Raylynn's short eyebrows shot up, mouth slightly agape. She got her subconscious wish to fight the blonde. She couldn't take her eyes off of Kirishima as he was being carted away by medics. The redhead put up a great fight and had great strength, but it wasn't enough. Raelynn couldn't end up like that. There was too much on this for her to lose. In a few minutes, the next fight had begun, and 𝗵𝘃𝗁 had made it back to his seat in the stands. Some of his classmates shot him a quick congrats before turning their attention back to Todoroki versus Iida. The blonde crossed his arms over his chest, glaring down at the scene for a few moments before turning attention to his next opponent, the little pink-haired sun-child Raelynn. 𝗵𝘃𝗁's face contorted into an annoyed sneer, forcing his eyes off of her and back to the fight. The teen had to keep his mind straight. He had too much to prove to lose this. Before long, Todoroki won his fight, securing his spot as a finalist. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 and Raelynn had already made it to their respective tunnels, using the last few moments to psych themselves up for the fight. It was time for both of them to live up to the promises and expectations they had set for themselves. Don't lose control. Don't lose control. Don't lose control. For the third time today, the chant ran throughout Raylynn's mind before her fight. The same simple chant her grandmother had drilled into her ever since she was 10 years old. Familiar, hushed voices spewed muddled words and doubts into her mind, Raelynn shaking her head to get them out. Now wasn't the time for it. Putting her hair up into a ponytail, she was ready to go. They've both been unstoppable powerhouses for the entire tournament. Some of the greatest potential among the first-year hero course. A tiny, kick-ass girl with a whole lot of quirk power to back it up. Raelynn Byeong-Ho versus a terrifying force of nature that blows people away no matter what. Katsuki 𝗵𝘃𝗁. This should be an exciting matchup. The two opponents bowed to one another, staring each other down. A second time that day, Jade eyes met Ruby once. So you didn't back out of the festival, huh? Guess you readied your coffin. A bloodthirsty smile came over 𝗵𝘃𝗁's lips. Now I get to see everything you've been holding back. Make this worth my time, Flamingo. The sound of Raylynn's name being cheered from the class one of stands made her skin tingle and put a confident smile on her face, energy coursing through her veins. If other people believed she could do this, she could easily believe in herself to win this too. Raelynn raised her fists, bending into a charging stance. You'll see. I'll be worth your time and effort, and I'll even be better than you. Pomeranian. Katsuki growled at her, smirk from moments before gone. His face screamed, "What the hell did you just call me?" And he seemed ready to yell it at her too. But Present Mike spoke up before he could. Ready, challengers? Present Mike screamed. Begin.